Welcome everybody to the City of Port Colborne public meeting this evening. We have four reports to go through from planning, and Mr. Aquilina and Mr. Schultz will take us through these. I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. I'll take Councillor Beauregard, Councillor Bagu. Any questions on the agenda? All those in favor, please raise their hand. And that's carried. Disclosures of interest. I have one so far with item 4.4. Councillor Beauregard has declared a conflict of interest with that public meeting under file D1404-21 2021-46. Any further conflicts? Seeing none. Okay, we'll get into our statutory public meetings. First item up is 4.1 is a public meeting report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 3288 Second Concession, file D14-02-21 2021-44. Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you just give me a second to share my screen here. Okay, let's see. Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. How about now?
There we go. Yes, we have it. Thank you.
Okay. So this application is for 3288 Second Concession. The purpose of this meeting is pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act and to consider an application submitted by the agent Julian Renault on behalf of the agent or owners Andy and Dorothy Veenstra for the lands legally known as part of lots 11 and 12, Concession 3, formerly in the Township of Humberstone, now in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 3288 Second Concession. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning from agricultural to agricultural purposes only and agricultural residential. The zoning bylaw amendment is being sought to satisfy a condition of a farm consolidation severance under consent application B01-21-PC. Notice of the public meeting was administered in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act as amended and Section 5 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. The notice of public meeting was circulated to required agencies and property owners within 120 meters of the property on January 26, 2021. Public notice signs were also posted on the property by January 27, 2021. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website. As of the date of this meeting, staff has not received any written or oral comments from members of the public. I will note that the Niagara region, in accordance with Section 3.3.4 of the Memorandum of Understanding between the region and local municipalities, zoning bylaw amendment applications for agricultural purposes only required as a condition of consent are exempt from regional review. The application was required as a condition of the consent application B01-201-21-PC. Therefore, this file is exempt from our review. The procedure to be followed this evening will be to present Department of Planning and Development Report 2021-44, hear any comments from the applicant, receive questions of clarification from council to the applicant or planning staff, open the meeting to the public for comments and questions, and announce the requirements under the Planning Act for written notice of passage of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. At this time, I would like to present Planning and Development Public Hearing Report 2021-44. The property is located at 3288 Second Concession, which is on the northwest corner of Brookfield and Second Concession. The property is actively farmed and contains several accessory buildings and a single detached dwelling. The surrounding lands are agricultural in nature with the exception of residential dwellings. The City of Port Colborne official plan designates the property as agricultural. Lands designated agriculture are prime agricultural areas as defined by the provincial policy statement and as identified in the agricultural land-based map of the regional policy plan and are used primarily for agricultural purposes. A portion of the property in the north here, the green on this map, are zoned environmental protection, which will remain on the property. Sorry, designated environmental protection. The The City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/3018 zones the property agricultural, which permits the following uses: accessory agricultural activities, agricultural use, tourism and value-added uses, conservation uses, detached dwellings, kennels, cannabis production facilities, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. A portion of the property, as mentioned, is also zoned environmental protection, which will remain on the property. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning to agricultural purposes only and agricultural residential. The agricultural purposes only zone permits agricultural uses, conservation uses, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto, including greenhouses. The agricultural residential zone permits dwelling, detached, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to invite the applicant to comment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schultz. This evening we have, on behalf of the applicants, Julian Renault and Brian Lambie. Any questions or comments?
So the comments on the part of the applicant are that, as Mr. Schultz noted, this rezoning is necessary in order to carry into effect the severance that was approved. It was a condition of the severance that was approved last week. And in our view, there's no contravention of the Planning Act or otherwise any public interest that would militate against it.
Okay, thank you. David?
At this time, is there any questions or clarification from myself, Your Worship?
Councillors, anybody have a question for Mr. Schultz? Or Mr. Renault or Mr. Lambie? Not seeing any. Madam Deputy Clerk, I don't believe there are any online delegations. No, try this one, okay. David, there are no online delegations. Council does not have any questions. Proceed.
Thank you. I will just read some cautionary statements prior to closing the meeting. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. I will note that any interested members of the public, if you would like to receive future notices regarding this application, you can contact myself at david.schultz@portcolborne.ca or the city clerk at amber.lapointe@portcolborne.ca, or you can also reach us at the phone numbers there.
Okay.
I just have one more statement here.
Yep.
If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the notice of adoption and passing of the zoning bylaw amendment will be given notice. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment and recommendation report will return to council at a later date. That concludes my portion of this public meeting. I will now turn the meeting back to you, Mayor Steele, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Can you take your screen down so I can see all of council now? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll have Councillors Bodner and Councillor Desmarais move to receive this. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you, Council. We'll now move on to item 4.2. It's a public meeting report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 836 Lorraine Road, file D14-01-21, 2021-43. This and items 4.3 and 4.4 all have delegations that have registered this evening. I just want to remind everybody that delegations have 10 minutes to speak. We ask that you be very respectful of everybody's opinion. and our deputy clerk will move people in and out, so please bear with us. With modern technology, sometimes it gets a little difficult. So, David, if you want to take this one away.
Can everyone see that again?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So this is for, as you mentioned, the property known as 836 Lorraine Road. The purpose of this meeting is pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act and to consider an application submitted by the agent Stephen Rivers on behalf of the owner Chad Peterson for the lands legally known as part of Lot 21, Concession 1, formerly in the Township of Humberstone, now in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 836 Lorraine Road. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning on a portion of the property from agricultural to A-59, which is a special provision of the A zone that will permit a landscaping establishment on the property as a secondary use to the main agricultural use. Notice of the public meeting was administered in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act as amended and Section 5 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. Notice of public meeting was also circulated to the required agencies and property owners within 120 meters of the property on January 27th, 2021. A public notice sign was also posted on the property by January 27th, 2021. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website. As of the date of this meeting, staff has received the following comments from Luke and Monica Newland of 806 and 501 Lorraine Road. Luke and Monica fully support the proposal and do not have any issues with the property. Lou and Mary Beth Newland of 501 Lorraine Road and 631 Lorraine Road have no objections to the proposal. Bill and Leanna Grist and family of 861 Lorraine Road support the proposal and the use of the property. Allert Van Kraligen of 773 Lorraine Road supports the proposal. Chris Pace of 950 Lorraine Road has no concerns with the proposal. Dave Bankert of Lake Effect Farms at 650 Lorraine Road and 856 Weaver Road. Dave farms the agricultural lands on the property and has no issues with the proposal. Jason Bodner and Caitlin Richardson of 916 Lakeshore Road East has no problems with the proposal. I will note that the notice was also circulated to the region and we were expecting comments prior to this meeting. However, they have not reached us yet. So I will make sure that's mentioned in any future staff reports that the comments are in there and obviously analyzed. Okay, the procedure to be followed this evening will be to present Department of Planning and Development Report 2021-43, hear any comments from the applicant, receive questions of clarification from council to the applicant or planning staff, open the meeting to the public for comments and questions, and announce the requirements under the Planning Act for written notice of passage of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. At this time, I would like to present Planning and Development Report 2021-43. So as mentioned, the property is located at 836 Lorraine Road, which is south of the Friendship Trail on the west side of Lorraine Road. The property is actively farmed and contains 2 accessory buildings with a single detached dwelling. The surrounding land uses are primarily agricultural in nature with the exception of agricultural residential uses. The City of Port Colborne official plan designates the property as agricultural. Lands designated agricultural in the prime agricultural areas as defined by the provincial policy statement and as identified on the agricultural land base map of the regional policy plan and are used primarily for agricultural purposes. The City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/3018 zones the property agricultural, which permits the following uses: accessory agricultural activities, agricultural use, agritourism, and value-added uses, conservation uses, detached dwellings, kennels, cannabis production facilities, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning on a portion of the property from agricultural to A-59, which is a special provision of the A zone that will permit a landscaping establishment on the property as a secondary use to the main agricultural use. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to invite the applicant to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. My understanding is Mr. Rivers is not here. We have Mr. Peterson here. Do you want to let Mr. Peterson go ahead, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Chad, yes, we can. Go ahead, thank you. Any comments from what David has presented?
No, I have no comments on it. I was, expecting Stephen to be here to make the comments, and obviously he hasn't been able to connect through, so I will just leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schultz?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself again. At this time, Your Worship, are there any questions of clarification for myself?
Councillors, just raise your hand. I have to scroll through this. I don't see any there. I don't see any there. Councillor Wells. Just unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had trouble unmuting myself in the format it was in. I had to rechange it. Anyway, this is through you to Mr. Schultz. The application you said is, just for clarification, it's a secondary use to agricultural. That's correct? And can you explain that for me, please?
Yes, that through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wells, that is correct. So under provincial policy, there is policies that permit secondary uses on an agricultural property, so long as they're just that, accessory. So this would be considered an on-farm diversified use as a landscaping establishment.
Councillor?
And just for more clarification on that, Dave, is the landscaping is then not a agricultural use, is it? Or is it not?
It is not. The on-farm diversified use allows the use to stray away from the agricultural, so long as the main agricultural use is still maintained on the property.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Any further questions, Council? I don't see any. Okay, Mr. Schultz?
Okay, before opening the meeting to the public, I would like to read the following. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. I will note further that to any interested members of the public, if you would like to receive future notices regarding this application, you can contact myself at the email on the screen or by phone there, or as well the city clerk, Amber Lapointe. At this time, Your Worship, if I would like to invite any members of the public who wish to speak to this application to do so. So I will go over to the deputy clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
We have two. My understanding is Mr. Josh McDougall's not here. And we have Mr. Sandy McIsaac. If the deputy clerk wants to bring in Mr. McIsaac.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, to start off, my wife and I, we oppose the variance. I'll start off by saying that we're a little concerned that our objections will fall on deaf ears, as I know that the town and some of the councillors have ongoing business relationships with my neighbor. But nevertheless, I need to voice our concerns. There are other businesses operating on the property that do not fall under the current zoning or the proposed changes. The proposed changes further infringe on the reasonable enjoyment of our property. So basically, it's taken any bit of privacy we do have away from us. They've extended the back of their shop parking lot, based pretty much right to our backyard. The shop goes right up the parallel with our property. Our house is only 70 feet from the actual property line, and I predict his shop is maybe 70 feet from that property line. Our daughter's bedroom is on that side of the home. She's woken up almost daily between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. She's 10 years old, with trucks being started up and left idling, backup beepers on their trucks. Every time they back up, these beepers go off. In the mornings, when it is like over the winter here, it's darker in the mornings. Their headlights are shining right through the windows of our houses at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Just go over my notes, bear with me. And also with the commercial, they're proposing to put a commercial chain link fencing around the property. That will just, being commercial property around us, it's going to bring down the value of our home in the area. And that's one thing that we're very concerned about, is down the road, if we ever do decide to sell our home, with anything commercialized operating beside us, it's going to reduce the value of our home. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes.
It's okay.
So they also bring in like their garbage. They pile it behind the shop. Like we've had pictures of it, basically 10, 12 feet high, of garbage from other job sites that they've piled back there. And that's right beside our house. They don't try and hide it. They don't put it anywhere else. They put it right there beside our home. All the vehicles are lined up right along the property line beside the 8-foot dirt berm that they decided to build 200 feet long or so. Also, with the vehicles and the equipment that Chad noted that they would have operating out of there, he mentioned a couple Kubota tractors, skid steer, and some other equipment that was used for agricultural use. We've witnessed through the last year here, there's actually, so with Chad, there's his two Kubota tractors that he mentioned. He has 2 skid steers. He has a hydro seed machine with a watering trailer. He has 4 trucks that we know of that we've seen in and out. He has a flatbed trailer, numerous lawnmowers, snow plows, salting machinery, and then with the other contractors that work out of that property, twin closed trailers, dump trailers, another flatbed trailer, an excavator, cube van, a panel van, 3 pickup trucks, 1 telehandler, 2 scissor lifts, and they, I believe, have 6 employees also. There's a lot more than just his own business operating out of there that we do not agree with. Just go over a couple other things. So the other thing is the letters that Chad received that don't seem to have an issue with this variance. As stated, the letters from Weaver Road and 650 Lorraine Road. That's the farmer who's actually farming Chad's property. So obviously he's not going to have an issue with it. He's using his property to farm off of. 806 and 501 Lorraine Road that owns both those properties. He's actually having work done from one of the contractors that rents Chad's shop off of him, on their own property. So there's a lot of these letters he has, they have business doings with. So some of these letters, I think, majority of these letters, he has business with these people. And the other thing was, in the summertime, pretty much nightly after work, the guys go behind his shop, they drink for 2, sometimes 3 hours after work, cursing, swearing out back. It was so bad to the point where we couldn't even leave our daughter outside. She had to be indoors because the swearing was so bad from all these guys all summer long. And it just went on the whole summer. So what's a big concern of ours also is with the drinking, driving, the cursing and swearing. We do have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's not right. It's a residential neighborhood. There's stereos. Guys pull in their trucks. They got stereos blaring to the point where you can hear them inside in our home. We can actually hear the music. I'm just going to go to a couple more of my notes here. Okay, and then just to get, like, I was always taught that you can ask for changes for showing you can play within the rules. But it seems that the neighbor only seeks to stall bylaw advancements and still does not request an amendment that satisfies the totality of the activities on the property. And that's pretty much. I just like how much more nuisance must my family endure before the town takes appropriate remedial action against my neighbor, instead of being deterred and reprimanded by conducting enterprises that already are prohibited. He is being given the opportunity to be granted further leeway, but only at our expense. And we're just, like, we bought this property, we checked into it with the city before we even bought the property from the city, because we seen the big building there. We found it was agricultural, it was not commercial. We were told that if anybody ever wanted to change it to commercial, it'd be pretty hard for them to do. So we bought the property knowing that, and this was supposed to be our retirement property, my wife and I. And it's become to the point where we don't even want to be here anymore because it's just a nonstop problems with them next door. It's just becoming too much, and the city really needs to think about this and step in and do the right thing here. That's about it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McIsaac. I do have Councillor Wells has a question to staff. Does anyone have a question to the presenter? Mr. Bagu, and then Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sandy, your property is located just north of the applicants?
Yes, I'm right beside just south of the Friendship Trail. Just my property runs parallel with his.
Okay, does the berm go through the whole length of your property?
No, the berm he put in is kind of in my front yard. It stops at the front of my house. It just goes, like, my house is 350 feet back from the road, which we put it behind his building because we wanted privacy in our backyard. But we don't get really that now at all. But they put a berm down towards from the road, just in from the road a bit, just up through the front yard, and then it stops before the front of our house.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bagu. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Just before I ask my question, could I get a clarification of something from our planner, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
Thank you. Through you to David. David, in the rezoning here, would this property be subject to site plan control?
David?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. Should council choose to approve this application, the application would be subject to site plan approval further down the road, which would address things like lighting, screening, and landscaping on the property.
Thank you, David. Through you to the presenter. Sir, I understand your concerns, and obviously, you're looking for the city to see if some or all of that can be mitigated. So in light of what the planner said, whether it be a chain link that's screened or closed board fence, the vehicles, the headlights, that type of thing could possibly be addressed by site plan control, where they're parked, things like that. Is that something that you would be wanting to see if this was approved? In other words, if many of those issues could be removed via a site plan control agreement, would that would that be compatible to you?
Well, the thing with the headlights and everything, like where we're at now, even with his 8-foot berm, the headlights still shine from the front of their shop right into the front windows of our house. And as with the chain link fence, like I know this fall they had a big gate system dropped off, delivered there, and it has barbed wire on the top of it. It's a full-blown commercial fence. And to put that in a residential agricultural neighborhood, it's not a commercial neighborhood. So to make it look like commercial, it's just going to take away from not just the value of my home, it's going to take away from the value of everyone's home, as far as I'm concerned down here.
Councilor Bruno?
Sure. Yes, I guess I'm just concerned that is it an assumption that is the fencing that was going there? I guess when dealing with these things where I've seen site plan control, it's depending on the level of what you are trying to obscure from the neighbor or the street. So because we're not at that stage or even near that stage, you're here to, and everybody else is here to give their thoughts. I'm just wondering if it's just your understanding that that's the only fence and that's the fence that will be there, because I'm not sure Mr. Peterson can presuppose what will be in site plan control or what type of fence. But I guess I'm just looking to see where some of your objections can be mitigated by the city. But that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Bruno. And Mr. Schultz, could you stop sharing your screen so we can use the
Yes, sorry about that.
full screen for council? That's okay. Great, perfect. Before I go to Harry, because I know he's got questions for staff, is there any further questions to Mr. McIsaac? Seeing none, Councilor Wells, your questions to staff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Councilor Bruno asked the questions, so my questions have been asked.
Okay, I kind of thought
Thank
that. No problem. I see Mr. Rivers has joined us now. Did you have any comments, Mr. Rivers, as the agent for the applicant? Oh, take your mute off. There you go.
I apologize for my old guy inability to log on in time, but here I am. I caught some of Mr. McIsaac's concerns. I certainly didn't hear all of them. If a lot of them are related to the one that I did pick up on was the headlights of the trucks, Mr. Peterson's trucks shining into his property. Certainly, as Councilor Bruno alluded to, site plan control can be used to ensure that the parking for those vehicles is on the south side of the building, so that the building itself acts as a buffer to Mr. McIsaac's property. I think Mr. McIsaac must have been certainly aware of the buildings that were there when he bought the property. They've been there since the 80s. And in terms of what the zoning bylaw amendment proposes to do is to provide for an agricultural related use in an agricultural area on land that will continue to be agriculture. We look carefully at the guidelines from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food with regard to the requirement that the three or four basic requirements, but one of them is that the land stay in agriculture. In this case, no land is being taken out of agriculture. Those buildings and the uses around them, the yard around them, have been that way 20 years, probably, maybe longer. And so we're not taking any land out of agriculture. What we're doing is allowing the landowner to continue to operate his landscaping business and continue to have the land farmed. So we meet the certainly the guidelines and the intent of the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for Greater Golden Horseshoe, and I would say the regional official planning policies and the city's official plan policies. Certainly, if Mr. McIsaac can outline in some detail what his issues are, I'd be more than happy to work with Mr. Pedersen, Mr. McIsaac to the best of our ability to resolve them.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers.
One comment, I did also notice Mr. McIsaac mentioned was the impact on land values, and I'm going to bring forward, as I have many times over my 40 years as a planner, land values is not a planning issue.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Any questions to the proponent's agent? Mr. Baggio, Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got you back. Mr. Rivers, in your report, on pages 41 and 42, you have actual photographs of the property. The newest photo I see is 2018. Now, if that picture was taken today, would Mr. McIsaac's property be in that picture?
If it was taken today, Mr. McIsaac's property would be showing, I believe, yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I don't have it open in front of me, so I don't know.
Yeah, because I drove by there and I looked and I saw the house there, but I didn't see it on your report to council. So that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Baggio, those are the most recent satellite imagery that's available through the region.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Any further questions? Seeing no further questions. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more cautionary statement. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give a clerk a written request for the notice of adoption and passing of the zoning bylaw amendment will be given notice. As mentioned, you can also reach out to myself at david.schultz@portcolborne.ca or Amber Lapointe at amber.lapointe@portcolborne.ca. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment and recommendation report will return to council at a later date. That concludes my portion of this public meeting. I will now turn the meeting back to you, Mayor Steele, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank
I'll
you.
have Councillors Wells and Danch move to receive. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor to receive, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you. Our next public meeting is report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment for lot 226, plan 789 on Colborne Street, file D14-03-21, 2021-45. Mr. Schultz?
Thank you. Just give me a second to get situated here, please. Okay. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
The purpose of this meeting is pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act and to consider an application submitted by the owner, Knowledge Hub Online, Inc., for the lands legally known as Lot 226 on Plan 789 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as the vacant lot on the north side of Colborne Street. I'm just going to share my screen again here. Notice of public meeting was administered in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act as amended and Section 5 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. The notice of public meeting was circulated to required agencies and property owners within 120 meters of the property on January 25th, 2021. A public notice sign was also posted on the property by January 27th, 2021. Meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website. As of the date of this meeting, staff has received the following comments from Ashley Reese at 90 90 Colborne Street. Ashley does not support a fourplex on the street. The build will not fit in with the neighborhood, and Ashley has concerns about property values in the area should this amendment be approved. As well as Kathy Tweedy. Kathy did not provide an address. Concerns with the parking at the proposed fourplex and not in support of the fourplex. The procedure to be followed this evening will be to present Department of Planning and Development Report 2021-45, hear any comments from the applicant, receive questions of clarification from council to the applicant or planning staff, open the meeting to the public for comments and questions, and announce the requirements under the Planning Act for written notice of passage of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. At this time, I would like to present Planning and Development Report 2021-45. The vacant property is located on the north side of Colborne Street. The surrounding land uses are primarily low to medium density residential. You can see it's highlighted in yellow here, the parcel here. The City of Port Colborne official plan designates the property as urban residential. Land uses in the urban residential designation include residential, neighborhood commercial, and community facilities and institutional uses. The official plan is not proposed to be changed as a result of this application. The subject parcel is currently zoned second density residential, or R2. The R2 zone permits detached dwellings, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning of the property from R2 to R358, which is a special provision of the third density residential zone, or R3 zone. The R3 zone permits detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, and fourplex dwellings, as well as block and street townhouses and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. The special provision has been requested to permit a fourplex on the property, as well as a reduction in lot frontage, minimum lot area per unit, and an increase in maximum parking area width. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to invite the applicant to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Our applicant this evening is Mr. Ali Vadia. I'm not sure if that's correct.
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So I'm the applicant. I live in Toronto, and we are planning to invest heavily in the Niagara region, and we have applied for a zone change from R to R3. However, the design is not finalized due to the COVID situation and work from home situation. Things are changing very rapidly, and people are looking for bigger units as well. We have seen the demand for 4-bedroom units where if the husband and wife are working from home, they both can have their own offices. So we are going to do a market research and demographic research and build according to the need and demand of the neighborhood. However, we would stay within the zoning requirement, and the look and feel of the building would remain and would complement the neighborhood as well. If the units are bigger, then we might just build a duplex. If the units are small, we might build a triplex or fourplex. But from outside, the building is going to look and match the neighborhood. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Vadia. Questions for the applicant? Any questions? Councillor Danch. Hit your mute button. Okay, Counselor, if you find it, let us know. Can you unmute him?
No, I
No? Okay. Okay. No. Okay. Counselor Beauregard.
through your worship to the applicant. How do you plan on, what things do you plan on implementing that would not, apologies, let me frame my question properly, change the impact of or to match the character of the neighborhood as it is currently?
Ollie?
So,
Go
yes,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you for your question. Very good question. So right now, what we are planning to do is we are surveying the whole neighborhood, not just the street, but the whole neighborhood now. And we see the whole neighborhood has very old houses. So some of them are small, some of them are big houses. We also notice there is one triplex on the same street. So, but those are all looking more or less as the same design from the exterior. And we look at it would be same aesthetic that is being used by the Port Colborne, especially on this particular street. The only difference is the would look new and fresh. But other from design perspective and the aesthetic, we are going to match the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Borgard?
Yeah, through your worship. I wasn't able to catch much of that. I'm not sure if the rest of council was. There was some technical difficulties, I think.
Okay. I'll come back to that. Councillor Danch was able to unmute himself, so Councillor Danch, go ahead.
And I was just gonna echo what Eric just said. The sound quality is terrible. That's my old backyard, and I'm trying to figure out. So the property that you're talking about would be to the east side of McCrae Street, heading towards Elizabeth. Is that what we're talking about?
David?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sharing my screen and hopefully that can clear it up a bit. Let's see here. So if you're looking at this screen here, this would be McCrae Street here. Everyone see that?
Yep. So it's in the middle of that block, Councillor Danch.
So you're going to be going to the west of McCrae towards what is that? I'm trying to figure out where you put a fourplex in that neighborhood.
Sorry, let me just check here. So, okay, sorry, I was incorrect. Elizabeth Street was that street that I was pointing to on the east side, and then Atho Street is on the west end.
Okay, so between Elizabeth and Atho, right in the middle on the north side. Councillor?
And I know where you are because, like I say, I rode my bicycle through there as a kid, and I'm just trying to figure out where the heck you're going to put a fourplex in that neighborhood. The sound quality from the proponent there is just terrible on my end. I'm catching every other word, but thanks for now. I'll pay attention to what's going on as best I can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the applicant. Sir, when you mentioned, it's listed your company name in there and that you've done other projects. When you proposed this, has you or your team done any preliminary modeling to work into that neighborhood footprint of the building, that type of stuff?
Ollie? Oh, take your mute off.
Hi there, can you hear me? Sorry, I was not.
Nope, go ahead. Yes?
Yes, so we have done preliminary examination, both from a neighborhood perspective and from a bylaws perspective. And building footprint would be anywhere between whatever is allowable under the R2 and R3, which is, I guess, between 30% and 40% of overall lot size.
Counselor?
Thank you. So you've plotted potential sizes on that site. Was the thought to do that within the parameters of that zone, or were you looking at having to seek parking and side yard, rear yard, front yard relief?
Ali?
Yes, sorry, the audio is not clear, but what I understood is whether the parking is included or excluded. The parking would be the excluded part. So yes, as per the R3 bylaws, whatever the parking required is possible, we will match those requirements.
Counselor?
So just on the rest of the building envelope, would you be seeking relief from Committee of Adjustment, or your design will stay on site given the current regulations?
Ali?
Are you aware?
Yes, most possibly it will. Our design experts are going to try to remain within the bylaws of R3 regulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Further questions? Ali, just to clarify, because you were breaking up with regards to Councillor Beauregard and Councillor Danch's questions. With regards to the size of the building and how it fits into the neighborhood, and we know that there's two neighbors that have made delegations this evening, you're willing to work with our staff with regards, and you did mention, and I'm making sure I heard this correctly, either a duplex or even a triplex on that property, as opposed to a fourplex. Is that correct?
Yes, if I heard you clear, the audio is not clear, but if I understood you, yes, we are going to work with your with the planning staff and make a best effort to match the design as per the regulations.
Thank you, Ali. So through to David. David, with regards to what he's asking for this evening, which is taking it away from the single and the duplex and then into a triplex or a fourplex, if he decides to go to, let's say, a duplex, that means that really this application wouldn't be needed because it's already zoned to do that. Would that be correct?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that would be correct.
Okay. Perfect. Because what I'm hearing, Ali, is between council and some of your answers is the fact that I believe what I'm getting from at least three of the councillors is that the fourplex may be too large for that neighborhood, just to let you know, so that you can work with staff with regards to a proper size. But again, that's what you'll deal with Mr. Schultz and Mr. Aquilino with. Councillor Beauregard, do you have a question?
Yes, I just received an email. It's a question from Mr. Labar, Adam Labar. The question is, how is the applicant going to maintain the property? He says he bought the land/home beside it, and for the last 2 years, he has been unable to maintain the property, resulting in critters all in and around my property and my neighbors. The city has been here multiple times to do work that he hasn't been doing. He's also unable to maintain the property in regards to the current snow salting situation. So if the applicant could address that.
Okay, Ali, can you address the maintenance of the property?
Yes, so thank you for the question. Yes, we are planning to hire outsource the contractor which can take care of the grass in the summer and the snow in the winter.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beauregard? All set? Okay. Any further questions by council? Councillor Beauregard.
Sorry, my last question. Through you to the applicant, could you in the future maybe bring forward a sketch, like a design of the property if you have one available.
Ollie?
I cannot hear you.
The counselor was asking if you had a sketch or a design of a building that you're going to be putting there?
Yes, we are working on it right now, and we were waiting for this meeting, so we are going to work with the planner and put something that is allowable as per the regulations. Our market research and demographic research would be finished in a week or so. So once we have very good data, what people are looking for, input on that, we would be meeting with the planner and then put a very quick sketch for everybody to have a look.
Okay, so you'll have that and that'll go through the planner. You heard that, Counselor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ali. Ali, I do believe it was that we had a conversation quite some time back with respect to this property and the plans that you had at that time. Yes. And you told me then that you would be working closely with the neighbors around the property. I just would like to know, how did that work out? What conversations did you have with them, and how did they feel about this?
Yes, so I spoke to quite a few neighbors, and they are very excited what we will be planning over there to do, because every new structure or when the new building or the fresh building comes up in the neighborhood, the prices increases by at least 15 to 20%. So they are very excited about that. Couple of neighbors also helped me about letting me know that there was already a triplex on the same street, which was recently converted back into the single family home, but there was a triplex over there. And I personally went over there nearby and had a look, and the triplex looked very similar to the other buildings in the neighborhood. So I was very excited to take the pictures of that neighborhood, whichever I saw the building, which was looked like a little bit bigger than the regular size, but something which is within the regulations. So I showed that I directed my designer about to do something similar. So the building envelope or the building design from the exteriors is going to look no different than what the existing buildings are there on the street. However, from inside, it would depend upon the size of each unit. If it's a smaller size, then it might be a triplex or fourplex. If the size is bigger, now because of, as I said, work from home situation, we have seen people are looking for even 4-bedroom or plus 10 kind of situation. So if the units are bigger, then it might be a duplex or triplex only. However, there is another consideration, because the bigger the unit, it would be expensive to buy, and the bank may not be possibly giving out a larger mortgage right now as well. So we have to see a balancing act between the size of the unit and whether the mortgage is affordable and allowable by the banks to buy a bigger unit. People might like to buy a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom unit, but bank may not give you the mortgage for that. While a bank would be much more easier to give the mortgage for 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. So we might have to do a very smart balancing act, and we might have mix of everything. We might have only 2 or 3 units, which is mix of everything. So we got very positive response, very motivating response from the neighbors on the whole street. I knocked quite a few doors, and there some. You also mentioned it, and somebody else also from a neighbor who mentioned it. There is a new subdivision coming up nearby, and that subdivision will look very fresh, very new, and very modern. So people are very enthusiastic right now to make their neighborhood look modern, new, and fresh. So we are going to help, and we are going to complement the design from an aesthetic and design perspective. We are not going to contradict. We are here to make a very good design which complements the neighborhood.
Okay, I thank you for that. And I do recall that when we had that conversation, we did talk about parking. The parking requirement might force a duplex rather than anything else because the space that parking would take. So I'm sure that you will come to sorting that out with our staff and with the surrounding neighbors.
Yes.
So we look forward to hearing about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. To Ali, say you get permission within 3 months to go ahead. When would this construction be completed?
I would like to do right away.
Oh, we lost you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you're back. Ollie,
Yes, we would like to build as soon as possible.
Ollie, if you could turn your camera off, it might give us better sound. If you don't, we'll still hear you, but it may give it. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Probably?
Yes. Answer that from Councillor Bagu.
Yes. We would like to build as soon as we get a permission. We'll start working on it, and we would like to build as soon as possible.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question for Mr. Schultz when the time is right.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
I'll come back to you on that. Any further questions to the applicant? Seeing none, Ollie, thank you. Don't leave yet. I'll go to questions. Any further questions to staff? I'll go to Councillor Bagu first. Councillor Bagu.
That was fast, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Schultz, I am a little skeptical about a fourplex, but if it comes to a threeplex and we okay it, is there anything to stop the applicant from going to committee of adjustment and applying for a fourplex? And because it fits everything, the lot size, it actually pretty well automatically gets okayed from the committee of adjustment.
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bagu. It really is dependent on what council decides at the end. So currently, the application is to permit a fourplex in the R3 zone. The R3 zone can be tailored to however council sees fit. So if they want to allow the R3 zone to go forward with only a triplex being permitted, that can be something that could be done. And then a fourplex would not be permitted on the property unless a further zoning bylaw amendment would be applied for. So as long as the zoning is worded that way, that would prevent the fourplex from being built.
Thank you, David. Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, David?
Thank you. Before opening the meeting to the public, I would like to read the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission or at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. To any interested members of the public, if you would like to receive future notices regarding this application, you can contact myself at david.schultz@portcolborne.ca or by phone at 905-835-2900, extension 202, or you can contact the city clerk at amber.lapointe@portcolborne.ca. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to invite any members of the public who would wish to speak to the application. I'll pass it over to the deputy clerk, please.
Oops, that's my bad. Ashley, you're there. You're unmuted. Go ahead, please.
Great, thanks. Good evening, everybody. I hope I can make this brief. Honestly, all of you really approached all the topics that most of the neighbors have had an issue with. Yes, the owner's correct that communications have been ongoing, especially with myself. I'm not sure about any of the other neighbors. One thing that was definitely miscommunicated was the fact that there would be a fourplex there. That conversation never came up in the over a dozen conversations we had. The idea of having a duplex definitely floated around. You guys know there's other duplexes on the street. I can't imagine how a fourplex could in any way fit into the neighborhood. Judging by the building the building plan, the driveways would be half of my house, meaning that the fourplex would be completely looking into my backyard. It's a full 2-story proposed when my house is 1.5 stories and the house next door is 1.5. There would be no point to us having our fences anymore. Honestly, there's really nothing else I can say that you guys haven't already approached with it.
Okay. Councillors, any questions to this delegation? Seeing none, Councillor Bruno.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I presuppose that things might close up after. Ashley did bring up a point that I wanted to address through the planner, but I'll wait for my turn.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No other questions? Councillor Desmarais, to the presenter, or to?
Yes, no, to the presenter. Thank you, Mr.
Go
Mayor.
ahead.
Through you to Ashley. Ashley, I just, one quick question. I do thank you, by the way, for coming out, for attending tonight and making your thoughts known. I would like to ask you if the owner actually did approach you and talk to you about the plans that he had going forward, and were you able to give him your thoughts then?
Ashley?
On a number of occasions.
Okay.
Once we had called the city maybe 20 times regarding the grass and the upkeep of the property. I believe it was someone in the city that suggested he reach out to the neighbors, in which he did, sometimes in an uncomfortable way. Maybe we didn't want him knocking on the door for 20 minutes, or we didn't want to have a conversation for 45 minutes. But nonetheless, he made it known what he was going to do. And I mean, we're not naive. It's an empty property. We would love to see a house on it. That's what all of us were expecting. And in the conversations that we had, you know, I discussed with him the potential of having a 3-bedroom home and having an in-law suite, something that definitely would have fit into the theme of the neighborhood. But again, a fourplex is something that through every single person on this street, our heads just spun. It was something that was never discussed, never brought towards anyone.
Okay, thank you very much. That's just what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions to the presenter? Okay. Ashley, thank you very much for attending. We appreciate it.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Bruno. You had a question for staff?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to David. David, we've seen this happen before where a lot of neighborhoods that are single and 1.5-story homes, whether they be a single, duplex, triplex, could you give us are there different height restrictions for a build there if it changes to duplex, triplex, fourplex? Is there a consistent height recommendation within the current zoning bylaw or those other zoning bylaws? What is the maximum allowable?
Mr. Schultz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. So I will say that across the board for any residential building with 4 or less units, the height limit is 11 meters. And I believe that's the case for a townhouse as well. The height only increases higher than that when an apartment building is proposed where there's 5 or more units. So with that, I believe the height limit is 26 meters for an apartment building. But other than that, across the board for any lower density residential building, the height limit is 11 meters, which typically allows for 2 to 2.5 stories.
Councillor?
Thank you for that last part, David. I just wanted to assure Ashley that even at any of those levels, they may be seeing a much higher home there within the current rules, notwithstanding whatever decisions arrived at the end of this process. Is that fair to say?
Mr. Schultz?
Yes, that would be correct. Any residential building on that property could hypothetically be built to that full 11 meters.
Very good. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Excuse me. Any further questions? Okay, David?
Through Mr. Mayor to the Deputy Clerk, did we have any other registered to speak on this application?
Through you to Mr. Mayor, to the planner, no, we did not.
Okay, thank you. I have one more statement here. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the notice of passing of the zoning bylaw amendment will be given notice. As mentioned once before or twice before, you can contact myself, david.schultz@portcolborne.ca, or call me at extension 202, or Amber Lapointe can also be reached. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment and recommendation report will return to council at a later date. This concludes my portion of the public meeting. I will now turn the meeting back to you, Mayor Steele, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Great. Councillor Danch. No, he can't find his mute.
No, I think he's not connected with audio, and he doesn't know how to connect.
Oh. Councillor Danch, it might be a good idea to leave the meeting and then re-enter the meeting and then join with audio. I think that's your issue here. There you are.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Bazinga. You know, Bill, I'm sorry, Mayor and the rest of you. From what I heard from the Ollie fellow there, the sound was terrible. I was missing probably half of what he said. So I'm not going to vote on this just because I couldn't hear what the heck he was saying, okay?
Okay. I'll take it as a no vote because that's what it'll be. But all we are is receiving it so that when it goes to staff, they'll take the information that's been given tonight. So any further questions? This is just to receive. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? That's carried.
Mr. Mayor, am I good to proceed on the next application?
Just 1 second.
Okay.
Madam Deputy Clerk's getting set up here. Great, thank you. We're on to item 4.4, public meeting report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 9 Chestnut Street, Chestnut Park, file D14-04-21, 2021-46. Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this meeting is pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act and to consider an application initiated by the City of Port Colborne for the lands legally known as lots 504 to 511 on Plan 8 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 9 Chestnut Street or Chestnut Park. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning from public and park, which is the P zone, to 4th density residential, which is the R4 zone. The zoning bylaw amendment is being sought to permit the construction of a residential apartment building on the subject lands. Notice of the public meeting was circulated in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act as amended and Section 5 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. The notice of public meeting was circulated to the required agencies and property owners within 120 meters of the property on January 26, 2021. A public notice sign was also posted on the property by January 27, 2021, and meeting details have been provided along with the council agenda on the city's website. To date, staff has received a number of comments from members of the public. I won't go into detail of the contents of these comments, but they will be provided in future reports from staff. I will just note the members that have submitted comments, just so that that's confirmed that they have been received and circulated to council and staff. So we've received comments from Scott and Lee Matheson, Melissa Bigford, Jessica Nuxel, Sherry Patterson, Barbara Daguerre, Penny Turnbull, Amy and Steve Forte, Maybeth Sizalagi, Jennifer Driver, Matthew Daguerre, Bethany Moore, Patty and Martin Fitzgerald, Tony Pruin, Michelle Turcott, Alexandra Taylor, Ryan Dick, Kimberly and Justin LeBlanc, Emmanuel Boudreau, Rick Lascelles, Gail Pulak, Donna Hale, Mona and Roland Breton, Jim Turnbull, the Tavano family, Josephine De Gregorio and Katarina Burry, Andrew Heron, Gino Castagna, Jacques and Olga Lieber, Irma Komazala, Jacques and Kathy Roseboom, Sylvia Suckle, Morella Menguzo, Rudy Suckle, David and Jenny Beck, Mary Bigford, R.B. McGinnis, M. Barry, and Irene L. last name. I apologize for the pronunciation for any of those names. The procedure to be followed this evening will be to present Department of Planning and Development Report 2021-46. Hear any comments from the applicant, who is the city in this case. We have Gary Long and one of the Port Cares representatives on the call as well. So receive questions of clarification from council to the applicant or planning staff, open the meeting to the public for comments and questions, and announce the requirements under the Planning Act for written notice of passage of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. At this time, I would like to present Planning and Development Report 2021-46. The property is located on the south side of Chestnut Street, on the west side of Clark Street, and the east side of Locke Street. The surrounding land uses are primarily low-density residential. The City of Port Colborne official plan designates the property as urban residential. Land uses in the urban residential designation include residential, neighborhood commercial, and community facilities and institutional uses. The official plan is not proposed to be changed as a result of this application. The subject parcel is zoned public and park. The P zone permits a cemetery, community garden, conservation use, cultural facility, food vehicles, parks, public use, recreation uses, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes to change the zoning of the property from public and park to R460, which will be a special provision of the R4 zone. The R4 zone permits detached, semi-detached, triplex, fourplex, and block and street townhouse dwellings, apartment buildings, public apartment buildings, and uses, structures, and buildings accessory thereto. I will, at this time, Your Worship, invite Christine Clark-Lafleur from Port Cares, as well as Gary Long to comment if they wish.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
I'll go to Ms. Lafleur right now for her presentation. Christine?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you very much. First of all, belated Family Day to members of Council and to your constituents viewing this evening. Again, I recognize that council is considering a zoning issue here, but I recognize the opportunity and appreciate the opportunity to provide clarification and insight with regard to this affordable housing development and the opportunity to provide safe, clean, and affordable rental housing to vulnerable seniors and families. Next slide. Thank you. I will keep my comments very succinct and brief this evening, and I'll speak briefly to the need, the vision, the process, and what's next. Next slide, please. The need. I know for members of council, this is very top of mind for you, but it's very clear that Port Colborne rental housing stock, particularly for safe and affordable housing, has not been met for many years. The demand has outpaced the availability. Clearly, like many Canadian municipalities, the situation is persisting and in fact worsening. Port Cares itself has long maintained a housing wait list for the private market. And again, I joined Port Cares almost 7 years ago. I think we were hovering around 100 on that list. And it's a very dated list, but clearly right now we're well over 150 individuals and families who are seeking assistance just to find rental housing within the private market. I need to share with council that after the council meeting in December and the decision was announced, Port Cares itself logged over 300 phone calls from individuals, and they were local residents asking to be put on a wait list for tenancy in this building. And at that time, we weren't even ready to put pencil to paper to take a waiting list. But I share that with you just to give you the insight in terms of the anxiousness and the excitement around this future development if we can make it happen. Next slide. 1 in 4. 1 in 4 Port Colborne residents are at risk of homelessness because they're spending 30% of their total net income on housing. Now, I hate to say this, but it's 1 in 4 in most municipalities in Niagara. That's a very staggering statistic. And it's a statistic that's tracked right around this country when it comes to core housing need. Can I get you to go to the next slide, please? But what's particularly of note for the municipality of Port Colborne, that of that 1 in 4 who are at risk of homelessness, half of these individuals are 55 years of age and older. Now, again, we know our city is a more of an aged community, but when you look to the real numbers, that's 2,400 local residents over the age of 55. And you think, well, how can you get to the age of 55 and be at risk of homelessness? Well, it's actually pretty easy. You can have a relationship split, your marriage can break up, you can have an illness, you could get prostate cancer and have to go on to a biologic that's going to cost you about $16,000 a month. You could be on Remicade and not be covered or not readily be available to get Ontario Trillium benefit. It does happen, and it's happening more and more. And again, dare I say that in these times of pandemic, I don't, I hazard to think about what we're going to see in the next couple of years out as people come out of this difficult circumstance. So again, it's not drama. It's a reality that there is risk, and there's notable risk for individuals who should be working towards celebrating their retirement, that they're actually facing these fairly difficult circumstances and that many are at a tipping point. Next slide, please. Core housing need. This is data. Again, this information comes from the region of Niagara. And again, when you take a look, numbers are numbers, and I think we've shared this table before. But core housing need, those are individuals earning less than $35,000 annually. Again, this comes from CRA. And they're spending the 30% of their income on housing. But when you look to the actual numbers and you look to the ages between renters and owners, of the 1,400 households in core housing need, there's about 706 individuals that are of the age 55 and older. Again, I share that to sort of drive it home that this is the reality for Port Colborne. It's a bit of a different reality in Port Colborne than it is in the rest of Niagara. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about what the rental market is like in Port Colborne. So again, these numbers are a bit dated from 2019, but a one bedroom on average is costing you around $1,250 right now in Port Colborne. You'll see them at $900, you'll see them at $1,100. Two bedrooms run $1,300, $1,500. I mean, those are really big numbers, but, you know, along with that, you know, you're not seeing a lot. There's not a lot of supply that's out there. So again, when we talk about this notion of affordable housing for the project that we're trying to pull together, working with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, part of the deal with working with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation as the funder is that any rental charge, you know, whether it's a one bedroom, a two bedroom, a bachelor, a three bedroom, it has to be at least 30% below the market rate. So that means that $1,100 rental unit, you know, for that one bedroom would actually be, you know, $734 in the development that we're trying to pull together. That $1,500 monthly rent would actually have to be $1,000 or less. So again, that's, you know, when we talk about these structures and projects, we have to be able to put together a development with a business case that ensures that the top end of what the rent will be at least 30% below the current market rent. So right now there's some pretty big numbers that are out there in the general rental market. The goal with this project would be to bring affordability by bringing in rental costs at least 30% below market. Next slide, please. All right, again, this is Niagara Regional Housing's wait list. This is not a Port Cares wait list. This is for Niagara Regional Housing. This is social housing. And again, it's a bit dated at 2019, but their wait list for seniors 55 and older for a one bedroom to get into a Niagara Regional Housing unit is 5 years. So if you apply when you're 55, you'll be lucky to get into an NRH unit when you're 60. You know, if you're 60, you'll be lucky to get in when you're 65. When you're 65, on it goes. I don't know, 55 was about 6 years ago for me. You know, I think for our population of 55 and older, every year matters. So again, when you're looking at availability and affordability, the situation is grim in Port Colborne. Next slide, please. Again, Port Cares right now, we work with transitional housing. So right now we are working with Niagara Regional Housing in the private market, assisting at least 50 households with maintaining their tenancy. So again, these are supports for individuals, some lone households, some family households who have different challenges, be it literacy, education, or family circumstance. But that experience for Port Cares gives us the insight as to what's going on in the market and you know, where the problems are, where the restrictions are, and where there's opportunity. And every day, you know, we are, you know, taking calls from new people looking for assistance. Next slide, please. So the Chestnut Park vision, you know, again, I feel like we're, you know, having the baby without the pregnancy, if I can use that analogy. This is This is really early on in our development of this project, and it's a very tedious, it's a very methodical, it's a very structured process. But I think to assuage the community and ourselves, and to stay focused on positive, it's important to articulate visions. So really, when we talk about vision, the vision is to really create a livable, affordable, and vibrant neighborhood where you could see retirees and independent seniors that can live and play, because seniors still play alongside young families with children. The vision as well, to create an inclusive neighborhood, and where particularly working single parents can make the most of their income to ensure that their children have the same opportunities to grow and thrive as other children. Kids, and I've said this to council before, but I don't think any of us know any children that asked to be born into families that struggle with means to put a roof over their head or food in their fridge. Again, it's about opportunity, for families and children, and giving them, an opportunity to live in decent circumstances. And the other aspect of vision is really that this, again, from a Port Care's perspective, isn't just plopping a great big building down on a lot. No, 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 not at all. This is our intent, is to provide at least a cornerstone that can inspire economic growth on Main Street, renewal, and this could be a great northeastern entry into the city of Port Colborne. Again, that's council's business, but if I can, cheerlead, I'd love to cheerlead for the opportunity to create a broader sense of community, because it's the opportunity is there. And again, there's some great reference material really coming out of an organization called Happy Cities that talks about the renewal of Main Street in small communities in a post-pandemic world. I've shared that reference with a few members of council. I would strongly encourage council to read that document. It gives you a lot to sink your teeth into, to looking at how the local economy comes through 2021 and 2022 with an investment in small business and livable communities. Next slide, please. So again, I have to see pictures in color. This is just, again, this is not about a single building. It's not about an institutional project. It's about an opportunity to create community and neighborhood. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, we're having the baby without the pregnancy here, but again, the intended residents of the building. Again, you look at our demographics, it's pretty darn obvious. We're talking about people age 55 and older. So again, without doing all the work that we need to do up front, the quick and the dirty on this is that, this potentially could be a 4-story building. And with that, it could be a size and a scope that could, accommodate maybe 30 to 40 one-bedroom units. I say one bedroom, it's more expensive to produce, but a one-bedroom living space is I think, an appropriate living space for what's needed in the community, because that kind of a living space, a one bedroom, can support an independent senior on their own, or it could support a couple. Again, how would you qualify? Well, again, the annual income of 35 to 40K or less. Right now, let's face it, there's a huge number of local residents, mainly women over the age of 55, who are solely reliant on old age security and guaranteed income supplement. And, with those, with that government benefit alone, you're not even coming close to 30,000. So again, intended residents of the building, seniors age 55 and older. And again, looking at the demographics, I would guess that they'd be largely women. Next slide. again, with the potential of the property and what could be built, there could be potentially 6 to 8 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom units. We have to go through that functional planning process. But again, the demographic are lone parents, with young children. So when you translate into the footprint of the building, there could be, again, 6 to 8 units. We don't know yet. We have to go through the functional plan, but honestly, I can't see it being anything more than that. Right now, there's 250, 240 female-led lone parent families with income of less than $34,000 who are resident in Port Colborne. It's a pretty big pool. Next slide. So again, there's process. We have to go through process yet. There's a long road to go, but certainly for process, there's no question. There's a commitment to collaborate with community. Absolutely. And again, the first step, we're just getting to the first big step in this project, and that's to get the seed funding from Canada Mortgage and Housing. So we're working fervently on the application. It's due in by the end of February, early March. Part of that application is going to be, the wait list. We have to launch the wait list as part of the application process. I'm very mindful about how we do that because I'm waiting for the tsunami of calls and how we work through fairness, equity, and opportunities. So still hammering out some details on that, but we will, to be able to get to the seed funding application, need to establish a wait list for the property. Whether or not it ends up getting built as part of the process, we have to launch this wait list, and then a process to keep it refreshed. So stay tuned. There will be more on that as the days go by. But I've a pretty strong number in my mind where I think we're going to end up with a number of individuals who would qualify based on income and current residency, who will end up populating that wait list. Next slide, please. Okay, here's my favorite slide. This is truth telling. I must, admit to council that in the course of the last couple of months, I have not had not one call from the community to say, what's going on? I have a concern. Not one call. But what I have heard has been really, really disturbing. Port Cares has been really transparent all along. What you've heard, what I heard, is that this development is going to be a den of iniquity. It's going to attract drug dealers, meth heads, and gangs and criminals. Well, here's criminal number one. The intent is for independent seniors, and if there's any crime or criminality out there right now, it's the terrible opportunity that or the lack of opportunity that older individuals in our community have to live in decent and affordable circumstances. So again, let me be clear, who this is for. It's independent seniors, again, people over the age of 55 making less than $35,000, $40,000 a year. So I want to be very direct, very definitive, very clear in who will occupy these properties, and I think I've done that. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay. Again, when we think about community, we think about how we want to be remembered in time. I think we want to be remembered as a community that's about the vulnerable, And I found this quote, it really spoke to me about a population that does not take care of the elderly nor of the children and the young has no future because it abuses both its memory and its promise. You know, it amazes me that, again, maybe it's because of the pandemic, but we've got a huge gap to fill, not just in Port Colborne, but across, I think, Canada when it comes to care and service to people who are aging. Certainly, we've learned that through what's gone on with the pandemic. This particular project won't solve the whole situation, but it can make a difference for a few, and maybe it can be an insight for other initiatives in the community and in other communities. So with that, I'll wrap up my comments. I hope I provided clarification to community and to council about the intention of Port Cares, about the early vision for this property, and about our desire to provide service and hope and opportunity. Thank you.
Great, Christine. Thank you very much. Before I go to council for questions to this presenter, Mr. Long, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. Good evening to those members of the community who have tuned in. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that this is a planning meeting to consider the merits of the rezoning application. So, but I also recognize that there's more than just a rezoning application, that the community have expressed themselves on this project. So I know there are members of the neighborhood that do want to provide comments on the proposal, so I don't really want to keep them very long. The only thing I guess I would say is that I have read the comments that the city has received. I think most, if not all, are focused on the future of Chestnut Park and sort of losing that park. But I think it's important to note that the plan, the overall plan, has always been to move the playground equipment located at Chestnut Park and consolidate it with nearby Lockview Park, and that that we would be engaging the community, the neighborhood, in the redevelopment of Lockview Park, and really look to put together a revitalization, a renewal plan for Lockview Park for the future. So I think there's a great opportunity, an exciting opportunity for the neighborhood to provide comments probably sometime this spring or into the summer as to what they would like Lockview Park to look like for the future in terms of new equipment, new designs, better accessibility, perhaps some technology. So that has always been the focus, and we will continue to be guided by the city's Parks and Recreation Plan that was approved by council last fall, or I guess sometime last year, that included public consultation. And there's also a section in there about parks and the process for transition of use. So that plan will continue to guide council and staff. And part of that plan is to engage the community on the redevelopment of Lockview Park.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Long. Council, any questions to Ms. Lafleur? I'll start with Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, first I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Long. He answered the questions I had for him before I had a chance to ask them, so thank you very much. And then I would like to actually bring Christine back and just answer a couple of questions here. Christine, thank you for taking the time to come and present tonight. And two things. One, during your presentation, you did very clearly explain the seniors aspect of the project. There was a little bit of a talk about young moms, about families, but it sort of sat there. Maybe you could just explain who the potential inhabitants of this building would be, so that people can understand that very clearly. There is a lot of misconception in there. That is one question, and then I'll come back with my other one. So.
Great, thank you. And my mic's back on? Okay, great. Yes, so again, when you work with Canada Mortgage and Housing, there are priority populations. So two of the highest priority populations are female-led single-parent families, and the other priority population is seniors. The representation of those two priority populations in your community is what drives Canada Mortgage and Housing's approval of the project. So those are the two demographics that stand out and are very clear as what Port Colborne needs. What drives the actual numbers of people who can be served would be the configuration of the building. So again, that would drive the actual numbers. So I gave some numbers in my presentation just based on the initial rough up of some of the modeling we've been doing, because the modeling is based on, again, the size of the building you can build, as well as how much, the affordability of the building. So again, I can't, it's seniors and it's lone parent families, particularly female-led families.
Okay, thank you. That does make it clearer for everyone. So clearly, by the presentation you've given tonight, it's very clear this is very much a work in progress. No hard decisions are made. So we still have an open slate to work on. The public has a lot of concerns, and I'd just like to know where they can fit in here, where their concerns can be heard, can be considered. Is there any planning, any opportunity for them to be involved in the planning process, or at least be able to be heard?
Absolutely, and again, we're so this conversation is so much further ahead of where the process is right now. So over the next 3 to 4 months, we have to work on getting the actual funding to do the first phase of the analysis. So again, we're basically in a hold position until May at the earliest. But through May, again, if we get the planning money, then it would be after that. So I would say, the second half, certainly from August through to December 2021, we'll be able to, that will be the first period of time where we can have that active engagement. We could set up a community advisory committee. We can do consultation sessions. But again, to be clear, the building. We will not be building a building that would support individuals who need addiction counseling. We're not Caisson. We're not the Newport Center. That's not what we are qualified to do. Similarly with mental health, we're not Gateway Niagara. We're not Canadian Mental Health Association. Those are very discrete and nuanced needs that other agencies are far more qualified to lead the way in. At the end of the day, Port Colborne needs affordable housing. At the end of the day, your aunt, your grandma, your neighbor's friend, those are the people that we're aiming to help, because that will build capacity within the community and it will increase the housing stock that's so desperately needed in the community.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I've read through all of the submissions from the various people in the community, and I'm sure you have as well. I made note of traffic, property values, crime, and property maintenance. So possibly you could gather together some stats or some information in the coming months or weeks, so that could be distributed amongst the community, so they could get a better idea of the truth of the situation, because there's a lot of rumor, and we want to make sure that everybody's dealing with facts. So if that could happen, that would be wonderful. I think it would help in the long run. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Clayliff, then Councillor Bruno. Councillor Clayliff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Christine. I have one question. I saw on one of your slides that you said seniors, 30 to 40 local seniors. It's a question that's being asked of me constantly. Will these be actual local seniors or will they be seniors coming in? I think I asked you that before and you weren't totally sure at the time. Is there any more clarity on that?
Oh, Donna, let me be, maybe it was a miscommunication through Zoom, but absolutely, it has to be local Port Colborne people. I don't know where this comes from that we're importing people, because the mandate, the Articles of Incorporation of Port Cares, it can only serve, Port Colborne, Wainfleet, and South Niagara residents. So that will be part of the wait list intake. There has to be proof of residency. End of story. It's for Port Colborne.
That's very good to hear. I know that people want to hear that, Christine. Thank you. And my other question is, a lot of comment I've been hearing about, the ability to get transport, and I know we're looking at new transport within the city, but I also had a thought, is there a possibility or an opportunity for maybe the bottom floor that it could be perhaps some retail, that there could be a fresh fruit market or something there if you're talking about young families, seniors that can't get to stores, get to different places? Perhaps there could be some retail there that would lend to the community. Because of COVID, we're going to smaller kinds of stores. People are not wanting to go to the big box stores as much. I just thought maybe that would be something that could add to the community. Is that a possibility for this type of a?
Absolutely. I mean, we have to work through Canada Mortgage and Housing formulation on what they will fund and not fund. But again, it goes back to the slide on vision. This has to be, again, inclusive and again, all those assets. So we've had, some conversation about, gee, wouldn't it be great to put even a rooftop garden on that building? So again, we've got to go through those steps. But if that can materialize, why wouldn't we? I think we should bring in all the assets to really showcase, the opportunity for Port Colborne to lead in its urban development and to show the rest of Niagara, if not, Ontario, how you can thrive in a post-pandemic world. So that would be awesome. And again, we have to set up a project committee. It's not my sole decision. Absolutely not. It's a collaborative decision. And to Angie's point earlier about the timing and conversation, I think this is kind of the governance structure and what we can set in place once we get that seed funding, which is around $100,000 that we will need from CMHC to do the pre-development work, which this would include.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Christine, for your presentation. Christine, I wanted to ask you, based on what you were saying, maybe for the general public who may have not read all of the documents or followed this from its infancy at council. Can you explain the relationship into the funding? And there's often reference to Niagara Regional Housing. In your slide, it was a lot of comparative. So is Port Cares the applicant? Will it be the operator? Is there a relationship with Niagara Regional Housing? Could you enlighten us on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess right now the relationship with Niagara Regional Housing is the project manager. Niagara Regional Housing actually put together a new division. Again, they are an agency of the region of Niagara, the regional municipality. But they've put together a division to assist organizations like the YW, Kiwanis out of Fort Erie, and I think there's another group out of West Lincoln. So service clubs, agencies like Port Cares to help agencies and service organizations do things like build seniors housing, affordable housing. So the current relationship with Port Cares has with Niagara Regional Housing is that they have a project manager, a gentleman by the name of Gord Sazi, who I work with on all of this. He's got an architectural background. He's got a planning background. So that's our relationship. Organizationally for Port Cares, we are entrusted with rent supplements to help people who can't pay their full rent. Niagara Regional Housing provides Port Cares the rent supplements on behalf of these clients to ensure their landlords get paid. That's our relationship with Niagara Regional Housing. The data in my report that I shared with you, I shared to give you an insight as to those waiting lists, because Niagara Regional Housing keeps its own discrete waiting list for its building. So I shared that just to give you an insight in terms of the availability for that social housing and what those wait lists are for true social housing. So again, organizational Port Cares works with the rent supplements on this project. It is a contracted project management service. Port Cares would own the asset. Port Cares would work with Canada Mortgage and Housing to finance the asset, and it would be governed and owned by Port Cares, the building itself.
Counselor?
Great, thank you. So you are the owner operator at the end of the day. So in terms of the construction of this building, so one of the things that goes into, I'm sure, your mortgage application, any subsidy, is that overall cost versus rent, trying to find that sweet spot with the 70-30, all of that goes into that business plan.
You got it, yeah.
My concern is one of the issues that will also be apparent in this is the aesthetics as well as the look of this building. So my concern on let's do the build first. My concern on the build is if you have to hit a sweet spot, does that end up having an effect on the, let's say, the quality, the look, the finish, the exterior, the accoutrements, the fencing, the parking? And so, that is a lot about one part of the issue, is so how it will look, feel, fit. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about how certain standards can be met, but this isn't just about fitting a construction cost number for your funding that ends up potentially, making it not the best looking of projects.
Well, then I feel your aesthetic vibe 100%, absolutely. And again, there's a lot of opportunity right now, that's out in the marketplace when it comes to, the opportunities aesthetically and architecturally. So again, our intent is to bring, a building that can last, certainly 50 years. That's also part of the business plan. They want to see, you have to have the long-term replacement cost. You have to have the annual maintenance and replacement costs. That all has to fit within the business plan itself. So there is a lot of flexibility, and within the marketplace, there's a lot of incredible design work that's being done that meets environmental standards, LEED standards, and again design standards. So we are so early into this that we haven't got anything developed. But what we do have with the relationship with the project manager from Niagara Regional Housing is that Niagara Regional Housing got the fully funded Rapid Housing Initiative funding, that federal government money where it's like, hey, you use a prefab type construction and you get this up within 14 months and it'll be fully funded under the National Housing Strategy. So Niagara Regional Housing is doing a build as such in Welland, and again, we have the opportunity to learn from, their experiences, the things they do well, and the things that maybe that don't work out so well. So the timing on it is great because we've got a neighboring project that we can leverage the experience from. So, you know, I mean, I'm into this more for the passion and not just to check off the box. You know, this whole, I mean, this is an initiative that, again, you know, the full intention of it is to serve the community and to provide that legacy. So we're going to leverage, you know, the entire program. I talked to Vance Badaway at length last week, and again with the federal budget consultations, to say, if you can do one thing, can you get another round of rapid housing initiative funding so that Port Colborne can get that, you know, can get you know, that opportunity and bring $10 million of fully funded building assets into the community. So again, Gary, I really appreciate your visionary questions, because it allows us to get excited about it and to, again, you know, it's not going to be a big box that drops on the corner. Absolutely not. That's not part of neighborhood. And again, you know, we have to work that entire process and you know, work with architects, the planners, and all the different providers to get the best result for the best dollar that's going to serve the community for 50 years.
So if I could, thank you. So just on that, Christine, is this building you talked about in Welland, is that a Niagara regional housing property?
Yeah, that's as I understand it. That's right. They'll own that asset, and again, they got the Rapid Housing Initiative funding to do it. So I'm not sure. I know Barbara Butters is on Niagara Regional Housing as a director, but I mean, I'm not intimate with all the details of that plan. I know I just was really excited to know that we had a neighboring project that we could learn a lot from and advance our project based on their experience.
So if I could, so does Niagara, so in your situation, do you have a contingency that will be built in? Because my concern is that when Niagara Regional Housing or the city of Port Colborne or anybody else that has other sources of funding gets 3/4 into the building and there's change orders, and believe me, things happen in the course of construction that nobody can predict. So all of a sudden, a strict government funding envelope is met with a construction problem. And Christine in Port Cares is told, this is the money you've got. And so is there a relief valve? Because my greatest concern, we've seen it with city buildings rightfully and wrongfully, where, you know what? It gets to that stage and things are drying up. You know, the city, other entities, the region of Niagara can come to the aid of Niagara Regional Housing. You know, city of Port Colborne can come to the aid of when there's an overrun on building, I don't know, the next building that we build. Mm-hmm. What's yours? Because this seems to be tightly controlled, which I'm happy with public funds, but I'm happy that the operator will be local because they make the best operators and care about the community. I'm concerned that you have the one funding source on, like most projects, there's change orders and there's cost overruns. How will you address that?
So two
without
pieces.
It impacting the look and the texture of the building.
So again, we have many steps to get through when we have to actualize this, and we haven't even touched some of it, but from a principal standpoint is that you have to have, and again, I'm sorry, I don't have the business, you know, I don't have the business plan modeling with me here at home right now, but there is a contingency built into the business plan modeling. That's a condition of, you know, working with CMHC as the loan entity. So you cannot get into this without having a healthy contingency. The other piece of it is that, you know, it's not like me when I did the renovation at my house. I can't change my mind midway to say, I want to move that tub and because I like the view from here. We have to do a functional plan up front. We have to sign off on the functional plan, and you're married to that. so that you're not getting into frivolous change orders. A good planning process will prevent you from getting into change orders on a new build. You have to have the integrity of the functional plan and the sign-offs before you get rolling. And again, with your developer, your builder, again, there has to be governance and oversight. There would be a project team that will lead this, that will include the architect. It will include specific legal counsel. The project manager, our finance representative from the board. So the governance on it is tight. If it weren't, you wouldn't see me here right now. I won't do it. I won't do it. I've worked as a public appointee on behalf of the province. This has to be locked down because it's a no surprises environment in the public sector. We're not going to waste our resources. We need to do our upfront work and again, be clear on intent and mandate before, we're into it. So that's part of the experience I've had, but again, on process with funder, we're going to lock down some of those issues and reduce the risk, right? Again, in a risk, the risk environment has to be mitigated or it's not worth doing the project. But I mean, we have good resources. I'm very confident working with Gord Sazi from Niagara Regional Housing. He's doing the 60-unit build in Fort Erie on Birdie Street by the hospital for the Kiwanis Club. They're doing one in West Lincoln, and he's leading one of the Niagara Regional Housing projects. So, it's that experience that will help carry us through.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more for you, Christine, for now. As the gatekeeper, you'll be managing, operating the building. So people that will apply to go there will, I take it, have to go through your process.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is that process? Is the process that you want to see is a mixed set of demographics? Councillor Califf talked a lot about seniors. You talked about people being left without sufficient housing in their 50s. How do you go about, as an organization, fulfilling your mandate, getting the tenants that you select for that building? Can you give me a little flavor as to what that process is and how do you see the mix? And is there a required mix? I guess I should ask.
Well, I think, again, I'm just working through some of that right now. So again, I'm answering questions, faster than real time, but they're good questions to answer. So we're working through that. Again, with it has to match the demographic. So age, so 55 and older. Originally, when we started with these ideas, I was looking at 60 and older, but it's clear from the population analysis that the need is 55 and older in Port Colborne. We will have to, set some criteria. So again, 55 and older, current residency of Port Colborne, income, right? You mean, if you're earning $100K, you're not going to be paying $700 for a one-bedroom apartment in this brand new build. You don't meet that financial means test. So I think those are sort of the big, big elements of it. But I think ultimately, and again, I'm seeking advice from legal counsel, is that we may have to do a lottery pull when it actually comes time, right? For fairness, if all other factors are equal, because from a human rights standpoint, I don't think you can go much further than that. So again, I would like to come back to council again in 8, 9, 10 months time once we can pull all these pieces together. But those are sort of the key points that I can make right now at this juncture. I hope I've answered all of your questions, Gary. They're quite detailed and I think really great questions. But that's pretty much the approach at this point. It will be the same for those those maybe if it is, again, if it's a 4-unit building, you're not going to have, if it's a 4-story building, you're not going to have 100 units. Let's face it. You maybe will have 40 units tops, but, and that configuration could be, I'm just pulling this, from some of the work we've done so far. Maybe it's, again, it's 8 units that are 2-bedroom. And maybe those are for moms, single moms with 1 child. They'd have to qualify by Port Colborne residency and then income and age of child. And again, if there's 240 applicants, it would likely be a lottery pull, for those 6 to 8 units. So when we look at the waiting list, which we have to put out there, we have to start to pull just to get names and then reactivate it, refresh it over time. Leading towards the actual opening of the building. I don't know. I'm going to guess we're going to get 400 people on a waiting list for a building that may house 30 to 40 units.
Thank you, Christine, for now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Christine and one for Mr. Long. Christine, you're going to build a building that lasts 50 years, and you have a plan for the majority of seniors and single parents with families. How can the community be guaranteed that at some point this might not flip to something else? Will it be just the demand that will never cease and it'll always be that configuration?
I guess, it's a really good question. But again, when I look to the articles of incorporation for Port Cares as a not-for-profit registered charity, we have to be clear in our mandate. So again, it has to line up to our objects, right? The objects of the corporation. So to answer your question, Ron, it couldn't just flip. It has to be aligned to community need. Now, I would hope that in 50 years, once I'm long past this earth, that, we don't need affordable housing or we don't need to have these mechanisms of assistance in our community. But I guess we would have to be able to build that into some of the charter for the building. And I don't, I would think that we could build that into some sort of mandate agreements that the building itself continue to be reflective of the community. I was spent last Thursday on a legal call with about 500 other registered charities and churches and talking about, sort of the long range need and meeting the objects of poverty relief. So, I think, there are mechanisms that could be built in that keep the asset cogent with the community. So yeah, we could put mechanisms in place, but to assure you that you just can't flip that obligation if Port Cares were, again, continues to be the owner, because the Port Cares has to live to its objects of service as a registered charity under Canada Revenue Agency.
Councillor?
I know, really boring stuff, but I kind of...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Long. Mr. Long, in some of the correspondence we got from citizens that have concerns, a few of them expressed a concern that if this goes ahead, that the move, that Chestnut Park could just be torn down while the build's going on, and we're still trying to decide what to do with the new park. And, this could take years before we ever get at it. If there is money for this quick build, 12 to 14 months, and it all goes through, how do you envision this rolling out? Okay, I'll give you another example. Council says, make it happen as quick as you can. Would we have the money to do it? And could we do it in a timely manner that park's ready to go as quick as Port Cares is ready to build?
Thank you, Counselor. I'll let Mr. Long start, but Mr. Louis may have some insight as far as funding, Counselor, because Mr. Bowles, he wasn't due to be at this meeting, so.
Okay.
So I think the two will share this. Gary?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yeah, nothing is going to happen to Chestnut Park as we know it until Port Cares completes their due diligence and sort of research and development over the next 6 months to 12 months. In fact, there will be a staff report and a draft memorandum of understanding coming to the February 22nd council meeting that will provide more information about the due diligence period and the potential timelines and expectations of both parties moving forward. So nothing will happen to Chestnut Park. And perhaps until Port Cares is ready and we are ready as a city to convey those lands to Port Cares. So perhaps I'll stop there as maybe the CAO wanted to provide comments on the Lockview Park redevelopment plan. Thank you.
CAO?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bodnar, and I think the question was specifically about funding for some future upgrades or enhancements to other city parks, whether it be Lockview or what have you. And of course, we sit here in February, almost March, with the 2021 budget already approved and no funds for that purpose. But Council will recall that there is some reserve funds set aside, whether it's dedicated funds like the parkland dedication or something of that nature. But also a few years ago, there were some lands that Shirkston had sort of encompassed of the city, and they were made to pay the city for those lands, and that money was set in a recreation capital reserve. So I think there are funding opportunities out there within existing funds without having to reopen the 2021 budget that would allow the city to proceed with infrastructure or construction improvements based on whatever council chooses to do when Mr. Long and his staff bring forward that report.
Councillor?
Sure. I guess what I don't want to see happen, I don't think anybody does, is that there's such a long lag time from when the city starts to react if we do go ahead with this, if this is a real thing, that we go, oh yeah, we should have been working on that a year ago, So I'll leave it with you, and we'll monitor it as it goes along. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bagu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one for Christine, just to reiterate, Councillor clearly, I think it was December 14th meeting, the question was asked about people coming in there from out of Park Colborne, and it was mentioned that you can't discriminate against people that live in other cities or towns. So I'm glad you sort of expressed that it will be Park Colborne's residents, and I was surprised when I heard you mention it, because that wasn't my impression coming into this meeting. That's just a comment. My question for Mr. Long, the Parks and Rec, you talked about the master plan, Parks and Rec. You talked about public input, which people did have when we initially did the master plan. But if this happens, will the residents in the area get input on the kind of park that Lockview Park would have? Like, say somebody decides they want a little water park like we have up at H.H. Knoll to add to it, to have two in the city rather than just one. Would that be taken into consideration, public input from the neighborhoods?
Mr. Long?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The plan has always been to engage local residents, the neighborhood, in the future redevelopment plans for Lockview Park. Staff will be bringing forward a report to council, I believe for March 22nd, that will speak to the public engagement plan and the next steps for that. And certainly public input is part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. and so we'll definitely be reaching out to the community to get their thoughts on park standards, design guidelines, best practices. There's an opportunity here to invest in new equipment, new amenities, the latest and the greatest, and we certainly welcome community input.
Counselor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further questions to either Christine or Mr. Long? Okay, seeing none. So David, next we're going into the public side of things.
Thank you. Yep.
Well,
If you don't, I will.
David, just before you do that, we're going to take a short 2-minute recess because we do have a number of people to go through. So I'm going to take a short 2-minute recess, and we'll come back and you can give the parameters for the public portion of this.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
from Christine and Gary. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to ask for any questions for myself, if there are any, before I open the meeting to the public.
Okay, council, any questions to Mr. Schultz? I don't see any, David, so proceed.
Okay, perfect. Before opening the meeting to the public, I would like to read the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne Council to the local planning appeal tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before a decision on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed by council, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. To any interested members of the public listening, if you would like to receive any future notices regarding this application, please contact myself at david.schultz@portcolborne.ca, or you can give me a call at 905-835-2900, extension 202, or you can contact the city clerk, Amber Lapointe. At this time, Your Worship, I would like to invite any members of the public who wish applications to do so. So I will pass the floor back over to the Deputy Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So, Madam Deputy Clerk, as I call out the delegates, you'll pull them out of the waiting room. Okay. Just to remind everybody, you have 10 minutes. Again, please keep your comments respectful. People don't always agree on things. Everybody has a different opinion, so, and please stay on point. And if somebody has brought up most of your, or all of your comments, do the sake of time, because we do have a number of delegations here. Actually, we have about 17 speaking delegates. Instead of listening to the same comments over and over, you can just state that you agree with so-and-so, or those were my comments. So we will start. I have my first delegation is Penny Butler. Ms. Butler? There we are.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Christine. Thank you very much for your description of what you're hoping to put together. Yes, the seniors do need a building like this. I totally agree with you. My question and my concern would be the location that was chosen. You did mention that this housing complex would be geared towards vulnerable seniors and lone parents. I would think that that demographic would need assistance in some way, meaning groceries, doctors, commercial. Right now, that area is very limited. I think there's probably 4 corner stores, and they've been there for 50 years. And I would think that demographic, like you did say, they wouldn't be going to big box stores, but they would be going to No Frills, Food Basics, possibly even Sobeys, the bargain store downtown. How would Port Cares make it accessible for these seniors and these people with these single parents to be able to do their grocery shopping? Port Colborne doesn't really have any transportation to get people from one point to another. That would be my number one concern. And with regards to the space that is there, you will be putting a larger building. There will be some green space there somewhere. If it's going to be between 40 to 50 units, possibly, would you be providing parking for these 40 to 50 people and families? And if you were, I wouldn't think that there would be space for that property to hold that many parking spots, plus the apartment building itself. Those are my biggest concerns for this proposal that's happening. And like I said, I think it's awesome that Port Cares does want to proceed with this. My concern would be the location and how the people will be served that will be moving in there. And that's about all I have to say. I don't know if Christine can comment about anything about that, or if it's just me speaking right now.
No, thank you, Penny, and I'll go to staff and to Christine. David, can you talk about the parking with regards to this project?
Yeah, so our zoning bylaws sets out the requirements for parking, depending on the type of apartment building, depending on if it's a public or private apartment building. There are different parking requirements. So for example, for a public apartment building, one third of a space is required per unit. So for every 3 units, 1 space is required. But I believe in Port Cares' proposal, they have indicated that they would like to provide more if possible. So I think that's what they have left it at. Yeah.
Okay.
Christine, with regards to location, can you, or other questions that Penny had? Did you want to comment on that?
Great. As you say, just disabled my mute. So again, it's with respect to location. Again, the key element in this is the available lands. So again, the vision and the support of the city identified these available lands, available service lands, and I think whether you're talking Port Colborne or any other community, available lands is it's like winning the lottery. So that drives it. Again, as I've repeatedly said in the course of this evening, is that we're at really early days. I mean, we have to identify the commitment of land to be able to secure the federal monies to be able to do the pre-development costs, to pre-development work. And the pre-development work includes the business plan, the initial modeling for architectural, the environmental, all of that technical work that needs to be done before we start picking paint colors and hanging out a shingle. So, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it may not come to anything, and it will be left to others long after me to resolve this issue for the community. So again, if I can state anything, you know, in response is that we don't know much of this yet. You know, it's a lot harder than people realize in terms of putting something like this together. And to Mr. Bruno's comments, there are a number of fail-safe mechanisms in the process, but you know, you know, you have to start somewhere. I mean, we have a choice: do nothing or try. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to try. And again, if I can state again that, you know, that this is like having the baby without the pregnancy. All the questions that have been asked tonight, I've done my best to be able to provide some insight. But again, with the caveat that we are at we're at the beginning of the beginning, and that there's an incredible amount of work to do to get to the definitive answers that will provide the comfort and the assurance and the opportunity. So Penny, to your question about groceries, doctors, commercial, and people who need supports, you know, it's for independent seniors. We're not a retirement home. We want to keep people in the community healthy and well for as long as they can. You know, will we be providing care and service? You know, I don't see that as the resident of this building. There has to be a level of independence. So let me make that clear. And again, you know, when it comes to this sort of development, you know, this, as I said, earlier on, this could be a piece that could ignite Main Street and again, the area could become the eastern gateway to the city. But that, again, that's a city planning vision. It's not my place to tell the city what to do, but it is my place to say, boy, is that could be really exciting. So we have to step through the process and very thoughtful and thoughtful way. So my apologies if I can't give you definitive answers at this time, but if I gave you definitive answers at this time, it wouldn't be appropriate because we have to get through the pre-development work. And again, I mean, we could come up by the time we get that done and say it's a no-go.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Christine.
these are the steps.
Which would be a shame because yes, there is a need for it. It's just the location to me personally, with the demographics that you're trying to serve, it's just a hard sell for me because you're going to be sticking people in an area that doesn't have the amenities that they may need. A corner store isn't ideal for a senior to go to grocery.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is the amenities. Again, to your point, I mean, I would be, again, that demographic as a 60-year-old female.
And so would I be.
And so it would be, again, those sort of pieces would be it would be a collaboration with the city. And again, I think, Ron, if I could even go back to my comment about the, rapid housing initiative and the 14 months to build it, it's when the clock starts. The clock, even if we were to land rapid housing initiative, A, if the federal government puts it back out there, and B, if they deem Port Colborne worthy of receiving that asset, that clock wouldn't start ticking for at least 9 to 10 months from now. So, you're almost into a 30-month time frame from start. It's not start from today. It's start from when all the clearances are done with the pre-development work and the environmental and all of that. So, that takes us into 2022, 2023. So important that I point that out because, 12 to 14 months can fly by and there won't be a shovel in the ground. But again, to Penny, again, this is all part of an iterative process and a collaborative process. And, it could spur on something that brings a whole lot more assets to the community.
Okay.
So
thank you.
I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions to the presenter? Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Penny. Penny, thank you for bringing your concerns to us this evening. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but the city does have a transit system. And
sorry,
we do have a transit system. And we're actually changing that right now, in the process of looking at change for that to make it even more accommodating. So that really shouldn't be an issue. But I do thank you for your concerns. I understand where they're at. And if I could just, Mr. Mayor, to you, possibly because we have a lot of people to hear and we want to make sure we have the time to hear them, possibly we could hear all their concerns and staff could actually address each of them individually and send them back an email with their concerns addressed so that they each have something in writing. Okay, I can do that. And then at the same time, they can I can have David work with Christine with anything that's directed to her. We can have those. That would be great. If that's fine. Yep, if that's fine. Is that good, council? That's good with everybody? Hands up if that's good. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Penny. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Melissa Bigford. Oh, there she is. Hello, Melissa. There we go.
Okay, I got the unmute. You can hear me?
We can gotcha. Thanks, Melissa.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Good evening, Mayor and fellow councilors. I would like to thank council for this opportunity to speak to you tonight on this very important issue. I'm speaking to you tonight to inform you why I feel the zoning bylaw amendment for Chestnut Park and why it should be denied. A change in zoning from public park to fourth density residential is not the best use of land in the neighborhood or within the city. The city website states the city has home to 21 beautiful parks comprising of approximately 88 hectares of parks, open spaces, and natural areas. That having too much parkland amenities is to be excessive and a hindrance to a city that is growing. These parks are precisely the reason why Port Colborne is a beautiful place to live and raise a family. We should be maintaining the current parkland area within the city and not selling off parkland. For those of you who do not know Chestnut Park, this community gathering place has been around since 1968. It's one of the few playgrounds on the east side of the city, a neighborhood park defined by your own Parks and Masters Recreation Plan 2020 report. In this report, it was noted as being well maintained, having play structures in good condition, while all contained within a chain link fence, providing for the utmost safety of our children. The same report made the recommendation to add saucer swings, a small shade structure, and a bench for seating. This extensive and well-considered publicly funded report also added that the basketball court needed upgrades to promote a cohesive package that unifies the site elements. There was no mention, not once, of this beloved park being considered surplus. Recent actions of the city, including planting of trees, and is in direct opposition to the park being considered surplus, not to mention a waste of taxpayers' hard-earned funds. The city's official plan states that the purpose of parks and open space hierarchy is to provide a wide ranging of recreational opportunities, ensure that each type of space is situated to meet the needs of an immediate neighborhood, and that the existing system of interconnected parks and open space shall be expanded and enhanced, utilizing the city's park and recreation master plan as a guide. Every effort shall be made to retain and acquire the maximum of land which is available. Short parks should be distinctive and express the character of the area in which they are located, and parks should be drained by continuous street frontage whenever possible. Everything that is currently available in Chestnut Park. I am deeply concerned with the proposal to remove Chestnut Park for the aforementioned reasons, but what is equally concerning is the lack of transparency and public input that has taken place. And I stress this because it was brought up by staff member Long, because at the December 14th meeting of council, report number states that Port Care's board of directors approved a recommendation to work with the city to acquire the Chestnut Street Park property. So how long has this ban been in the works? Because according to the master recreation plan for the process for transition of use, it states that in the process for the transition of use for the partial or full disposition of parklands, the city should undertake the following approach. City staff identify and recommend the park to consider for full or partial disposition. Council consideration to confirm direction, including public input. Access current parkland supply based on standards for park provision. Survey residents and other stakeholders within 500 meters of the park to gather data on park usage. Hold a public meeting with surrounding residents and stakeholders to discuss. Based on public feedback and usage data, present options to committee/council for consideration. Develop an action plan. Hold a public meeting to discuss, process the action plan, and present a final plan to committee or council for approval, and then comply with city bylaw regarding the disposition of land. None of this, your own master procedures were followed. Why were these steps not followed? Who decided to disregard these steps in the process? Who determined that Chestnut Park is underutilized and could be repurposed and redeveloped? Your own plan also states that this was a well-maintained park and that resources should be directed to the city's existing parks rather than being utilized to create new parks. Why develop and invest taxpayers' money on a parks and recreation plan if you do not intend to follow it? Your plan also states that funds leveraged from selling off parcels of larger parks could be used to help offset costs for improvements. I don't see how $1 will be able to use to offset the cost of improving Lockview Park. Lockview Park needs improvement. There's no playground equipment and limited parking. And there's not even a sign to designate it even as Lockview Park. Furthermore, your own report states that it's not fully accessible and it's hindered by a ditch and there are no walkways. There's also the safety concerns as well as there's no lighting and limited site visibility and access, and trees on the site need to be maintained and removed. I also asked why there is no timeline, no plan, and no cost outline for Lockview Park. Where will the money come from? And it was stated that it's not currently allocated in the 2021 budget. Does that mean our council will vote to leave our neighborhood with a viable park for years? Will the councilors consider a condition of rezoning put on by council to have the park redone at Lockview before the zoning is approved? As my letter in there was other questions. I also wonder, will the current infrastructure sustain a 20-unit housing development at this property? The speaker also, I would like transparency and clarification if this is a 2-story or 4-story building, as reported in 2020-188 at the December 14 meeting, as it was stated it would be 2-story, but the preventer mentioned that it could be a 4-story and a 30 to 40 unit, which I don't think there is parking, as there was site plan amendments that had to be made. Why is the park being sold? Why does Port Payers believe that this parkland is available and suitable for affording housing development? What makes this parcel of land ideal for an affordable housing unit compared to other properties within the city? The city just sold off 6 lots within the city. Could none of these properties have been developed for the affordable housing project? In conclusion, I do not believe that this proposal is in the best interest of the neighborhood and the community as a whole, and that all the implications of the zoning bylaw amendment have been reflected. I do not think that this housing development is compatible with the adjacent uses of land, and I feel this development is appropriate to the land use and will put undue stress on the surrounding community, leaving the neighborhood without a park for years. I think too many important aspects are being left out, and that we as homeowners, and especially kids in the neighborhood, will feel the greatest effect of these shortcomings. My family uses this park. We want this park to remain a neighborhood park with the improvements stated in the park and master plan report. If the decision, then we expect the first priority, prior to the rezoning to be approved or the development taking place, would be for council to establish and create a safe and sustainable park at Lockview Park with the same amenities we currently have access to at Chestnut Park. I also want to add that I went for a drive with my son last night as I was preparing for my presentation and to visit all the parks within the city. It was quite interesting to visit all the parks and all the different amenities available. We discovered that Chestnut Park is the nicest park on the east side. It has the best playground equipment, the least issues with water and drainage, and wasn't even protected by the fence, whereas some of the parks just have snow fence. My son also noticed how all the parks and playgrounds seem to be higher percentage located on the west side. So why is it that we are losing another park, or one of the only parks on the east side? Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Councilor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I understand what Councilor Desmarais is at, and Melissa has brought up some, quite frankly, some very good questions and some questioning our own policy. My concern is it is true that we could probably not answer all of her questions and 16 others here tonight, but I also don't think it's fair that the people listening in and the presenters don't get to then hear the answers that each constituent puts out. And so I'm wondering, much like some other bigger issues around town, where we create a repository of the questions and the answers that people can refer to, because I don't think leaving here with 100 questions tonight and no answers, we're leaving it to the public to share the answers they got by email. I just don't think that works. It's either another meeting with all the answers provided, or everybody that's registered gets an answer, or it's on the website, and hopefully we distill it down to less questions. But I don't know if it's for you, Mr. Mayor, or the CAO, Mr. Long, to find a better way of answering Melissa and others' questions tonight, given the time constraints, but again, that they could be shared.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to go to the CAO.
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, we do have communication staff, city staff watching the council meeting. We are planning to prepare an FAQ or a frequently asked questions type information package for the public and for council that we're going to put on our website and social media channels. I mean, it's also customary when people bring forward these questions that they're answered in the eventual staff report. So council will have a staff report before them in the weeks to come, and all of these questions would be answered in that staff report typically. So I think if I understand what you're looking for, I think we're prepared to provide that to the public as well as to council, if that's going to be adequate to meet your needs, Councillor Bruno.
Yes, it would go a long way, but I wouldn't mind hearing along the way if anybody of the participants has any other ideas that could add to that. But yes, I'm happy that that's at least another way to share the answers so that they don't have to go searching for them. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Demeray, then Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bruno. You made good sense with this one, and I had totally missed that when I asked that we answer each person individually. I would still like them to have individual answers to make sure that they each get an email that addresses their specific questions. But I would also like to see a copy of all those questions and those answers posted on our website for all to see. That's very, very important. And it goes a long way to all the misinformation. We have to deal with facts. So that would be a very, very important thing to do. Either that or we're going to have to split this meeting into two tonight because we won't end up having enough time to listen to everybody. And that's the most important thing. So I would agree. If we can put it up on the website, I'd be happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with Mr. Bruno. This is supposed to be a public process. Our public processes have been really tampered and hampered with because of the COVID-19 situation. A lot of people would just like to walk into some of these meetings and participate, and we can't do that now. We have to, delegates have to, or people that want to speak have to make previous notifications to the clerk and everything else. So I think we are really suffering from meeting that public meeting definition through the COVID. So I tend to agree with Councillor Bruno, and I think everybody needs to be heard, and everybody needs to be responded to, and everybody needs to hear what everybody's hearing and saying.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina, with regards to the CAO and what he spoke about with our communication staff, I would be sure that your department will be working closely with our communications department to put together all this and then to get back to each individual speaker as well as posting this so all speakers can look at this plus the general public that weren't here. Is that correct, Mr. Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and all of council, that is correct. We will work, planning staff, myself and Mr. Schultz, will work with communications, Mr. Long and Mr. Louis, and put together an information package to address every comment we made or we heard this evening and we have received, to actually address each individual comment or question with an answer.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Okay, Council? All right. Councillor Clayhoff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess we should ask, Melissa, does that satisfy you? Are you satisfied to hear back from us that way? Or are you looking for an answer right now?
As long as all the questions that I submitted and are actually answered. I know sometimes in the past, questions get missed or omitted. So that would be my stress on that they do get addressed. Because I think I brought up some very valid points that need to be addressed.
You did. So as long as you had the opportunity, once you received yours, in some way to come back, if you didn't get all your answers, would that be all right as well? Like if they're posted and then you have the opportunity to say, ask staff about a particular question that you didn't feel was answered, to have basically a conversation with them.
Yes, or when this comes back to council, whether or not members of the public will be able to address anything that was not addressed or in the report, in the questions.
How does that sound, Mr. Louis? Mr. Louis, does it, you and Mr. Aquilina and Dave? Does that sound doable?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Kalil, if it is, I believe we have the presenter's comments in writing. I'm not sure if we have them for every presenter. I'm looking towards the clerk's department now. So even
yes, we do. Yeah. We have Melissa's because I've read them just before.
Right. So we'll be able to follow them along, parse the questions out of that, and make sure that they're responded to directly, responded to in the staff report, and then sort of formulated into the frequently asked questions. Now, sometimes two people might have asked the same question in a different way, so you might not see verbatim reproductions of the questions in the FAQ, but in order to get the spirit of the question out and the official answer from city staff and city council out, we'll make sure that those are all sort of cobbled together or collated.
Satisfactory, Melissa?
Yes. Good. And I guess the key is, does it have to, at the next meeting, go through council, though, to have anybody to re-speak to it?
Mr. Aquilina? For Mr. Schultz?
I can jump in there, Mr. Mayor, through the presenter. We would have to discuss with the clerks to see if we would allow virtual delegations at that meeting as well. I know in the past, regular council meetings do not permit virtual delegations, so we would have to follow up with the clerk's department to ensure that that can be done in the future.
Okay, and that's something you and Mr. Aquilina can work on with the CAO and the clerk's office?
That's correct, yeah.
Good, thank you. All right, Madam Clerk? Okay, it's okay with the Madam Clerk? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Jessica Nuxel. Oh, there we are. Hi, Jessica. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. You can go ahead.
All right, I don't really agree with this decision. The reason being, I actually lived in St. Catharines for a very long time, and it used to be Manchester. I don't know if anybody has heard of that place. It was meant for low-income housing people like I was, and it was nothing but problems. You had single parents, yes. You had drugs, you had prostitution, you had basically people breaking into your house. It was, you couldn't even keep your door locked because people were breaking into your home. And I couldn't even deal with that. So when I left there, and plus also the houses as well, when you decide to sell, you were not getting more for your house. Not at all. It was actually lower. So people were not happy in the area. And that's why I left. And that's why I moved back to my hometown, which was Welland. 11 years ago, I moved here because I thought Colborne was going to be better for me and for my family. I raised my two girls here. That park is one of the reasons why I bought my house with my husband. Because that park, I have not seen a park that good at all in anywhere. Welland does not even have any good parks. They're filled with needles. They're filled with whatever, dog poop. Like this one here is clean. And I just don't agree. And what about the children? Don't the children have a say with their decisions? My daughter even said to me about the park that there's that big tree right by the fence, by the road. And she went there and she literally cried and took pictures of that park saying, Mommy, that's the best park that's around here. She even said the one right behind the YMCA, that one there, she doesn't like it because it's too outdated for her. And she's almost 10 years old. So I let them go to the park. They're allowed to walk to the park. I let them. There's no issues. But when you bring like housing in that over here in this area, we're asking for problems. And I'm not saying that just because of whatever, other people saying, well, this can happen. But I've been there. I've been down that road. I get that there's people that need the help. I get that. But there's other places. There's even some farms that are even up for sale. Why can't you take a property of that and put in affordable housing, apartments for people that are like 50, 60 years old? There's other options. Just don't take away from our family or the residents. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Our next presenter is Sherry Patterson. Okay. Sherry, you're there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had a whole idea of what I was going to say, but since I've been listening, that's kind of changed. So bear with me. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to all the counselors who responded to my email and to Councillor Wells for actually returning my phone call a little while ago. I wasn't necessarily going to need to look at notes, but I want to respond to some of the things. First, I'd like to speak to Ms. Clark-Lafleur. Thank you very much for your presentation and the detail that you gave. A lot of that information I didn't know before, and I want you to know I admire your passion and your drive and the vision that you talked about, and I hope that you get what you're looking for because it's definitely needed, and I don't think anyone's arguing that. You mentioned that no one called you about their concerns. And I don't want you to take that as any kind of slight. I don't believe that you in any way have any responsibility towards me, whereas I believe that my counselors do. After listening to you, if I have any questions in the future, I very well might approach you. I admire what you're doing and I support it, but you weren't the place for me to start. So in speaking to the counselors, I've got a couple things. First of all, I think that there's no question that this is needed. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made and don't want to waste your time. My concern is location. If we look back to Mr. Schultz's plan that he put up, I think you can see very clearly that this area is fairly closed off. It's small. We're talking about a block, and there's not a whole lot of access areas. I think there's 3 to Main Street and 2 to Kalele. In my letter, I said that I thought this location would lend itself better to seniors, and I'm really happy to hear for the first time that that's the consideration. If I had known that 2 months ago, I might not have been concerned. And while I understand, Ms. Clark-Lafleur, that it's early days and that, you know, we're talking about the baby before the pregnancy, when that's your home, some of those details are important as you move forward. So, lost my train of thought there. I hope that you do go ahead and set up a community advisory committee because I think there's lots of people who would like to be involved. So I guess my concerns are to council, and it goes to something that Ms. Clark-Lafleur says. The building needs to be reflective of the community. And when you look at those plans and you look at the community and her vision, I hope that you support her vision while also supporting the community. I didn't really have a problem necessarily with the 2-story, 20-unit building that was going to be primarily for seniors. I can't lie, a 4-story building in that area with that access is a big concern to me, isn't reflective of the community and doesn't match. I learned a lot about process listening to the other people before. I think you call them the site control plan. I really hope that they do their due diligence and look at this area and consider those things, like traffic, like parking, like who's going to be there. Those are all big concerns. A key element in location is available lands, Ms. Clark-Lafleur said. That's true. Is this the most suitable location for what you're planning? Please give her what she wants, but really think about where that's going to go and who else is there. In my opinion, her dream needs to happen, but isn't a match to the location that you've granted her. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is Barbara Daguerre. Okay, Barbara, you're there?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, thank you.
I don't know how to because you changed the whole fucking thing on me.
Excuse me?
It's taking me some time, just a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're just waiting for you to go ahead with your presentation.
Sorry, I didn't have a camera.
You don't need a camera. We can hear you.
The proposed changes will drastically reduce the enjoyment of our property. It will also lower our property value. And how does this proposed change not impact our community? When this was proposed, did you, the city, do any research on the impact of this to our community? The size of the building, availability of amenities, etc. And if so, what research was done? The issue is not affordable housing or whether Port Colborne needs it, because of course they do. The issue is rezoning and removing an existing park to do it. Why can't this regional housing be built in an area that is already able to deal with the infrastructure needed? The east side of Port Colborne is horribly underserviced. No grocery stores, doctors, pharmacies, terrible transit. How do you propose to provide for these new residents without first fixing the existing issues? And with Christine Clark-Lafleur, the issue I have with proposed changes has nothing to do with the fact that Port Colborne needs housing. It has to do with removing an existing green space when the city of Port Colborne has multiple other properties that would suit the needs that Port Cairns wants to meet. Why lose an existing park to meet those needs? Bruno, the look of the proposed business or building is not what the residents are concerned about. The east side has fewer parks than the west side, and I want to know why the city will remove a park that has been there for years. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is Penny Turnbull.
Do I get no answers?
Yes, you'll get those. They'll actually come directly to you from our staff, and they'll be posted on our website and our social media.
Yes, you'll get those. They'll actually come directly to you from our staff, and they'll be posted on our website.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I'm just looking for Penny Turnbull.
I'm Penny Turnbull, and I have my sons here helping me out with this.
Okay, go ahead, Penny. Thank you.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Oh, you have to mute the YouTube video.
Hi there.
Yeah, just looking for Penny Turnbull.
Yep. I'm here. It's my and I have my sons here helping me. Thank you. So you guys were talking, well, Christine was talking about how she wanted a place where parents can make most of their income and thrive. But how about us that already live here that take their children to the park every single day to teach their children to have fun and thrive, and you're going to take the park away from them? And also, you guys were talking about, or Christine was talking about the Rapid Housing Initiative, where they needed to get it done in 14 months. to get the money that they want and get it done fast. And then she was asked about a contingency plan if it lasted longer than 14 months. And she had no model on what was going to happen about that after. Like, is there not going to be millions of dollars into a new sewer system put into the place that's going to move into?
That's right. In a small area, a new house, one new house comes in and you're digging up the road. You're talking now a sewer system for 40, 50 residents. You're talking drain, like on top of parking, on top of everything else. You're talking, there's so much work that has to go into this that you guys, you're way over your head for the amount of area that you have and what is proposed to go into this small, delicate land. Like the park is so important, and I really think that you guys aren't thinking through the repercussions of just letting someone go ahead with their proposed plan without really thinking about any of this.
Okay. Is that your presentation?
Only part of it.
Okay. Keep going.
I would also like to mention that my husband and I bought this house specifically for the park and for a view of the boats. Now, if you build where you want to build, we lose the park, which we take our grandchildren to all the time, and we lose our view of the boats. There'll be no reason for us to live here anymore. That's not fair. I agree that we need affordable housing, but like other people have said, we need it on the west side where they're close to doctors and pharmacies and grocery stores. So I think it's only fair that you guys reconsider putting the housing where our park is and finding a place on the west side that would be much more convenient
And
suitable for low income housing, or actually for anybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
New location that is proposed for the park, I feel it's unsafe. As a woman who has a small child and takes my child to the park multiple times a week, I personally like the location of Chestnut Park as it is, because there's forward-facing homes, there's traffic that goes by, and should anything happen to myself, my child, we get into any kind of situation, there are people that are out and looking out for you in the neighborhood. With the proposed new location, it's kind of tucked away behind houses. It's very secluded, and I personally would not feel safe taking my child there. When she's older, I wouldn't feel safe sending her there on her own. I'm also concerned about property values. The truth is that there is a poor reputation that comes along with affordable housing. The house right next door to the park sold about a week before the announcement of the building came into play. And those new property owners have been vocal on social media saying that they would not have purchased the home had they known that the building was going in. So I do believe that this will have a negative impact on property values. There's a couple of comments made by Christine about spurring economic growth in the east side of the city with this building, but I'm not quite sure how that would spur any growth down here. There actually already is an affordable housing building not too far away from this location, across Maine, and there's been no economic growth that was spurred from that building. We also have a beautiful large rec area here, a rec center. And again, that hasn't spurred any economic growth really over here. There's no new shops, there's no grocery stores, nothing within walking distance for the folks that will be going into this building. There's also been comments made about this building needing to have the demographics that are in alignment with community need. So at this point, that is seniors and possibly some lone parent families. However, in 10, 15, 20 years down the line, how is that going to change? So it likely won't be seniors anymore. It will be a new demographic. And so how will that impact the neighborhood? And also, there's also been some comments made about putting the baby before the pregnancy tonight. And I do believe that's true. And I'm just wondering why this proposal was approved in the first place when there's really no answers to give to the residents, to city council. Nothing can be answered. So why was this approved in the first place? Yeah, there's just been a real lack of transparency that I believe is really unfair, that the community hasn't been consulted until it was announced. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Amy. Our next speaker is Maybeth Zilagi. She's not here? Okay. We will go to Jennifer Driver. Okay, I guess we're having trouble getting Jennifer Driver in. We'll come back. We'll go to Matthew Daguerre. She just came in. Oh, sorry. There's Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? She's not on mute. Does everything look fine, Madam? Okay. Are you there, Jennifer?
Yes.
Oh, there we are.
Sorry, my computer just lost connection just as I was trying to get on.
No problem. You can go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time that you're letting us speak on behalf of this zoning application that is being looked at. What I'm looking at is some of the comments that was brought on the December 11 meeting with my letter being read. Yes, I am very much into the affordable housing. I strongly support it, and Port does need to have it. Actually, every municipality needs it, no matter where you go. But I am very strongly into the location of where it is going to be put. I really don't want to lose the park here. I moved into this house about a year ago, and I bought this house with having the park here because I am a single mom with low income as well. So I fit that category with that label everybody puts out there. But I was lucky enough to be able to afford this house. And with doing so, I can let my kids play. Now they're going to be taking the park away with this idea of the affordable housing here. When I was looking for a place, I ended up being, my marital status ended up being separated. So I actually had to start looking for affordable housing where I would be able to walk to amenities and everything. I actually was very fortunate throughout everything, so my situation became a lot better. Now, I look at it for, as Christine was putting, it'll be 30 to 40 potential seniors living in this area with the income of $35,000 and $45,000. Looking at that, they might most likely not have vehicles, so they do have to walk. And of course, as everybody was stating, I agree with a lot of the comments that are made. There is not many places around here that you can walk to get accessible food, medical, even clothing. So I was looking into, as soon as I found out about this, we were not notified by council or the city about this idea of having this building built. I had to learn through the newspaper article about it. So I started looking and realized that there was actually land that the city did have, which was beside 292 Catherine Street, that was beside the tracks, which was down the street from Port Cares itself, and it is very close in walking distance to many amenities that the individuals that will be residing at that building would be able to go into. Unfortunately, of course, that lot is gone now, but there's probably, I challenge anybody to try to find another spot. Port is a very large city that would have other opportunities of land besides Chestnut Park, giving up green space. Very limited over here on the east side for green space, and I really don't want to see this one to be taken away. I see so many families and other children playing there that I actually have to, we take our turns to wait till it gets a little less, because it does get actually sometimes crowded with other people playing there, which is great. I love watching everybody using this park, and you're going to be taking it away. We have a lot of yards that are very small. We need the energy to be expelled in green space. Also, looking at the ideas, I thank Christine very much for giving us the intentions of what Port Cares wants to build on this property. It's great. I understand, just another location would be more suitable. But they're looking at like 4-story building, which would be housing approximately 30 to 40 individuals. So I'm looking at that. It's about 10 units, 1 units, potential 2 units on each floor. And then you still have to have room for parking. And I love the idea that somebody indicated about having commercial on the first floor. Well, now you're just taking more space away from those, because you have to be able, when you do one of these buildings, you have to have the cost, because this is at all costs coming in of rent, which is only 30% of market value rent, and to pay off the expenses that the building is going to incur. You got taxes, you have everything, all the utilities. So I really am for the low income housing, because we definitely need it. But I really believe if council or the city can look into it further, there is more suitable. And yes, I do agree about there is other buildings around here, like across the street of Maine, there is the other apartment that is low income. I'm just starting to get my research because I'm just getting my bearings with moving here. And I agree, there is no economic development. I was talking to other individuals where there used to be grocery stores down here back in the day. And there's just the corner stores that I see around here now. And definitely that is not enough to support a person on low income. They're on a strict budget. I know that because I am. And going to spend money at a corner store does not work. And if my car breaks down, I need walking distance. So I totally understand that affordable housing, you need a really ideal location for it. I'm also very disappointed to find out about this through articles in the paper, as opposed to having letters, ideas of this going in. So other than that, that's pretty well it, because most of my other ideas
You're frozen.
were everybody for their time, for listening, and look forward to hearing the response.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Matthew Daguerre. He's not here? Okay. We will go to Bethany Moore. Oh, there we are.
Hello?
Hi, Bethany. How are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity for us members of the community to be able to bring forth our concerns. So I fully understand and support the need for low-income housing in our city. My concern is also one of location. So I am more concerned about the new proposed location of the park. Park should be visible to the public eye and located on or near a street where you can easily gain access to it. This new location is bordered by trees and backyards. So our city is seeing and experiencing more and more vandalism, theft, crime. My fear is that this will be an invitation for those who don't have the best intentions in mind. So older kids and adults alike, drug addicts, etc. My backyard happens to be one that will directly border this park. There is little activity in that field there now, and quite frankly, we like the view back there. So we don't have a fence. And we felt relatively safe without one until last summer. So last summer, I had 2 men enter my yard through that field and speak very inappropriately to my children. I was just out of view. It scared me. It scared my kids. We called the police. The men were gone before the police arrived. But with that increased activity back there that the park will no doubt bring with it, will this be more of a risk for me and my family? And what about the safety of the kids who may be old enough to attend the park without an adult with them? I don't know many people that would feel comfortable letting their kids go to a park that is basically hidden from plain sight. I'm wondering if there has been any thought put into how the city will ensure that this is a safe area for our kids. Is the city going to put measures in place to maintain the safety and privacy of those living in the immediate area of the park? And are city workers prepared to stay consistent with upkeep and regular checking of this park, likely more so than other city parks, to ensure that it is safe to use? Taking a neighborhood park away from a community and relocating it to a very unsafe location is quite frankly just plain unacceptable. If our concerns fall on deaf ears and the relocation of this park goes through, I expect the city to put extra measures in place to ensure the safety, security, and privacy of both the kids who will use the park and the members of the community immediately surrounding the park. I'm hoping the council can advise what those measures will be. Thank you.
Great, Bethany, thank you. Our next delegate is Tony Pruitt. Not here. Okay, Tony's not here. Then would be Michelle Turcott. Oh, there we are. Okay. Hello, Michelle.
Hi there.
Go ahead,
okay,
please.
Good to go? Okay.
Good to go.
Good evening, Mayor Steele, City Councilors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my concerns this evening regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment that's been initiated by the city. My name is Michelle Turcott, and I'm a resident of Clark Street. My husband and I purchased our home just a few houses down from Chestnut Park in 2019. It was the location of the park that was the main reason for us buying our home. Our hearts sank when we received the notice of public meeting in the mail just lately. We also know that decisions and sales have already been made before the public was even made aware, but felt it was important to voice our disappointment in the city and appeal the rezoning from P to R4 in our neighborhood. The following reasons are why we are appealing the change of zoning. A, traffic throughout the area will be negatively affected and will increase tremendously, which is a cause of great concern for resident safety, especially the main intersection of Clark and Chestnut Street, as this is already busy and high traffic intersection. Adding more entrances and exits in this area will be logistically unsafe and dangerous. This will be true especially for children walking to bus stops and school. Has the city done surveys in this area to see if this logistically works? Looked into specific signage that will be needed and adding crossing guards to the area? Do you feel this is in the best interest of safety for your residents in this neighborhood? B, crime levels have increased greatly in this area, especially lately. There is a real concern from residents that it may become worse with more traffic and added population to the area. What proof from the city do we residents have that this will not only get worse? C, the proposed rezoning to add an apartment building and parking lot changes the dynamic and environment completely in a small residential neighborhood. An urbanized lot that is already zoned for such a unit should house an apartment building of 20 plus units and offer quick walking distance to places of employment, banking, groceries, and pharmacies. D, it is of great concern that home values in the surrounding area will be inevitably decreased with the rezoning, as buyers will find this neighborhood less desirable to live in with a low-rise apartment building placed directly in it. We have many young families that have just purchased because of the park being where it is. Changing the zoning creates a large level of regret from recent home buyers, including us, and disappointment from long-term residents. How do we know our home's values will not be affected? E, residents living in direct proximity to this rezoning and proposed property can be impacted negatively. This includes affecting their well-being, mental health, anxiety, and depression, furthering an already ongoing crisis within our community. What options will be made available to these people? I ask you, Mayor Steele and City Councilors, how will this neighborhood keep its close-knit, family-friendly, and small residential feel that has been here for the past 60 years after being rezoned? By adding a massive building and concrete parking lot built directly in the heart of it. I urge you to reconsider and to hear the voices of the concerned and disappointed residents in front of you and at home viewing right now. To hear the over 430 individuals that have signed the petition for you to leave Chestnut Park zoned as a park, and to go back to the drawing board for the relocation of this project where an R4 zoning is more suitable, not to destroy a beautiful, beloved green space and park in the process. Keep Chestnut Park a park for the next 60 years, for our children, and for future generations to enjoy. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm also wondering too, just really quickly, I know that it was supposed to be a 2-story building, and now I'm hearing that possibly 4. Which is it?
Christine?
We don't know yet. As I said, we have to, this is the early steps. It's all part of the pre-development analysis. It's all part of the environmental. It's all part of the methodical steps. And again, then the ability to, again, the business plan in terms of the financial feasibility with Canada Mortgage and Housing. So I can understand your frustration to want to know the definitive answers. And if I had the definitive answers, I would have, shared them. In fact, it would have been a consultative process, but we still haven't even been, we're still not even at the stage to put the application in for the funding for the pre-development costs. So it's a long ways away, and there's a lot of hurdles to get over if in fact we can realize this. So again, I think that's been part of the disconnect in the conversations tonight, is that folks feel that there's already a number of decisions that have been made. No, that's not where the process is at, and it won't be that. It won't even be to that point within the next 8 months, 6 to 8 months. So there is a lot of time for input and a lot more detail to go before I can provide any further, firm detail.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Our next person is there. Our next delegate is Alexandra Taylor.
Can everybody hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yes, we can. Go ahead, Alexandra.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And not only to the councilors, Mayor and Ms. Clark Lafleur, I really appreciate the time that you are all taking today to be a part of this discussion. So my name is Alexandra Taylor, and as of February 20th, 2020, my boyfriend and I moved to Clark Street. I am originally from Port Robinson and he's from Welland, and since then we have fallen in love with this community and city and hope to stay here for a very long time. Chestnut Park has added to part of that love for this city. We know that the city only wants to move the park 150 meters, but that isn't the issue. When I think of the zoning being changed that drastically to accommodate for affordable housing, I see it having a negative impact on the surrounding area. I am 100% on board for providing families with places to live in more affordable housing units, but I believe that it is the potential to sustainably decrease the safety of my community. Being able to afford housing is a huge problem in the Niagara region and especially Port Colborne. There has to be locations where this zoning is already in place. Going from Parkland to R4 zoning, is very drastic and ultimately unheard of in a community of this size. The city has sold off a lot of land, and we are wondering why those places cannot be used for this project. We were told that there is no other place for this complex to go, and many others and myself have a hard time believing that. I went and checked out the location to where the park is planning to be relocated, and I was wondering why that land couldn't be used to build the housing. There is plenty of space that is much more suitable for housing and development to go, and this will make less work of moving the park and cost the city less money to put a brand new park in. Extending John Street and putting townhomes or semis in place of where you plan to build a new park would add value to this area and not decrease it like it would by taking out Chestnut Park and putting the 20+ unit housing there. There are no banks, grocery stores, or pharmacies within walking distance of this location. Having the social housing in place of Chestnut Park will make it quite difficult for someone without a car to go to these said places. It takes approximately 40 minutes to walk to the food basics from Chestnut Park, and that is a long way carrying groceries and potentially having children with you. There is also no busing system available, and I know that there was stated that it's in the works, so we're not sure what could be updated with that. But as of right now, there is a busing system, but it has to be pre-scheduled, and it can be kind of a pain to arrange that, but we're not sure how that'll be changed. But this is why I believe that putting this project closer to these amenities will benefit them more than us in the community. With Algoma ship repair being sold and the unknown of what will be happening there, and the addition to social housing being put in place, this could really increase the levels of traffic coming through this area. There is a very high population of elderly in this area and also young kids. This could make this area a lot less safe and busy with cars and population that will be moving into this building. Clark and Chestnut are already busy as is, and adding this apartment building will only increase the traffic and likelihood of putting children in danger. We have had over 400 people sign the petition to stop the project from happening. I have had countless phone calls with the concerned public, and we are all thinking the same thing. We appreciate the council trying to make a positive change for Port Colborne for affordable housing, but putting this housing complex here does not make any sense. We have researched countless projects similar to this one, and there are always negative results. We do not want to burden these people who need housing. We want to make it we want to make it as easy as possible for them. The new location for the park is also a very secluded place where there could be potential drug use, vandalism, and it is out of the public eye where people are expected to let their children play. I understand not being able to have this meeting at City Hall due to COVID concerns, but having it virtual has drastically limited the amount of people being able to participate. This area is majority elderly who do not have access to computer, Zoom, etc. I believe this is unfair because if we had a way to include them, they would have all wanted their voices to be heard. We are all extremely upset with how the city has handled the situation. We were not notified until after the decision was basically made to go forward with this project. And we are only being able to voice our concerns now. The surrounding area was not approached or questioned on how this new zoning would affect us. This makes myself and the dozens of people with whom I have spoken feel like the priority is getting this project through when it should be the residents who actually live here. This community is 100% on board with wanting to provide affordable housing for those in need, but we please ask for the location to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Alexandra. Appreciate that. Our next delegation is Ryan Dick.
Hello?
Hello, Ryan, how are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking council members and all of the public for staying here for so long, as I realize this is a bit late for, well, anyone, including myself, on a weeknight. Christine, I'd also like to thank you for all of your comments and clarification that you've provided thus far. And I really do appreciate what you're trying to do in this community, as I feel that the need for housing is something that is extremely important in this community, has been vastly underlooked up until this point. It's something that, as my profession as a realtor, I can see every day, as we have the housing prices increasing at an astronomical rate, which are beyond the means of the average family in this area, particularly if we look at the income which is being earned. And that is unfortunate. And that is something that breaks my heart as one, an individual of this community, and two, as somebody who helps participate in providing housing for people in this community. But that being said, this community does have a few great things going for it. And I want to kind of touch on those things as we kind of speak here further. So first off, this community of the northeast portion of Port Colborne is a great community which has been growing over the last 5 years in a proportionate amount, which has been increasing higher than the average percentage across the Niagara region. One of those reasons is because of its affordability, and also because of its accessibility to the rest of the Niagara region. Its proximity to Highway 140 and its proximity to Highway 3 have provided an opportunity for those of whom commute along the Niagara region, and whether that is west, east, north, or south, to access areas within the Niagara region for their personal business, whether that be through trades or otherwise. This area has been accessible for those people and affordable for those people up until this point. It has been an area in which we have been able to move and afford to live. As we are changing the housing demographic, and as we are changing the demographic of the community by putting in a multi-unit residential housing complex, it is certainly changing the demographics of the community. My initial concern then becomes one which is most concerned with the ultimate success of the community housing project, which is being implemented. When we look at successful community housing projects that have been implemented across the globe, whether that is within this own country or within other countries across the globe, we see that one of the most important factors for successful housing projects is the location to amenities, whether those amenities be healthcare, banking, grocery, or the like. This is something that is not seen on the northeast side of Port Colborne. The northeast side of Port Colborne is very beneficial for commuters, but is not beneficial for those of whom have been disadvantaged upon their side and do not have access to transportation. Although there is transportation in place, I believe that a phone call to acquire a bus to get you to any sort of place for health, grocery, or otherwise is not sufficient in this manner. And I do not believe that it would be considered sufficient for those of whom live in our community. Moreover, when we continue to look at what is possible in this community, there is certainly options for development and growth. I believe that if we continue to look at areas such as John Street and Locke Street, there is certainly the propensity, or the possibility, I should say, for the area to be expanded upon. I believe that the need for housing could be subsidized through this growth. But when we look at that area, again, when we look at good planning and good urban design, good planning and good urban design promotes us to providing private funds to allow us to provide housing for those individuals who are in need, as opposed to subjecting taxpayers to forcing them to be providing housing for those of which are in need. This is an issue of which I see as a big concern. I feel that if we could spur private investment in this area, which would allocate housing for those of which are in need, that would be the most beneficial way for all of whom are involved, as it would also incur private investment as well as public investment for this area. And it would take the burden not only on the taxpayers, but on the private individuals who proceed to invest in the area and provide housing for the individuals who need it. We could do this through subsidization, through land surveys, and otherwise, as if we look at the areas which are proposed to be the new parkland, they are also areas of city development. So it is possible that the areas of which we are speaking are possible to be given to private sale or private development. And we are able to look in that for providing housing for those of which are in need. I have nothing further to say on this topic. I feel that my community has done a fantastic job at providing reasons as to why this could be potentially positive as well as potentially negative. And I stand behind my community in everything that they have said. And I just wanted to add my point. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody for hearing me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. There are a number of other letters that came in who aren't online that are delegates. As was discussed earlier, staff will take all of this information that has been presented, as well as those letters that we received from citizens, and will compilate all those together, put the frequently asked questions together, and then get back to each individual person with the answers to their questions, plus community as a whole can go onto our website and other avenues that will come forward through our staff to look up the information with regards to this. So we thank everybody for speaking this evening. David, you have to finish this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will close by saying that if you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning law amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the notice of the adoption and passing of a zoning bylaw amendment will be given notice. I will note that for anyone that has not submitted their name, address, and or email address to the clerk or myself, can do so by emailing david.schultz@portcolborne.ca or Charlotte Madden or Amber Lapointe, any of the clerks. However, if you did submit comments already or did speak at this meeting, we do have your information, so we will be able to notify you of any future meetings in the future. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment and recommendation report will return to council at a later date. This concludes my portion of the public meeting. I will now turn it back over to you, Mayor Steele, to close the public portion of the meeting and receive the report for information.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
If I can have Councillors Desmarais and Councillors Claylough removed to receive. Any questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. That's carried. Thank you. We have no procedural motions. We have no information items. I now declare this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you, Council.